Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto became the supreme titan emperor of the multiverse, and Raven, Starfire, Jinx, Terra, Hinata and Tamari fell for him part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Space bridge is stable, travel parameters set, is the passenger all set to travel? Yes he is, but Minato, I don't like that we have to do this. I know Kushina, neither do I, but for the safety of our only son, it's best this has to be done. I shouldn't have created that serum Kushina, if I did, none of this would have happened. Is not your fault Minato, you were under pressure from the general, you had to do something or we'd lose all our funding and our home, we won't be able to take care of our little maelstrom if it were to ever happen. In planet Krypton, a planet far different from us yet is home to a species similar to ours in some aspects, a myriad of activities were currently taking place, however it was obvious to all living on said planet that their home was on the brink of extinction caused by a war on which they'd found themselves on the losing side, yet for the safety of their child, two scientists had long ago devised a plan they're currently executing. Their names, Minato and Kushina of the Kryptonian House L, and right now, the two were working in a hangar of some sort, as the room not only contains any equipment you'd expect to see in a control station, it also contains a very unique ship, one which looks ready to set sail through the universe, and some sort of structure greatly resembling a gate where a greenish portal stood. It looks dangerous, yes, but for the life of their son, they wouldn't mind it if they'd lost their lives. They already had plans to bond with him in their own unique way. He's beautiful, isn't he? Kushina whispered wistfully, gazing at the sleeping baby safely tucked on a bed and under a blanket. She had a longing expression on her face as she walked to the vessel and placed her hand on the glass, while Minato stood behind the control panel and watched it all with a pained expression on his face. Are we actually doing this Minato? Kushina, we have to. Minato stated, placing his hand on his forehead with a sigh. Krypton is on the brink of destruction, if not from the war, then the threat of a madman wishing to use the extremist serum to destroy lives rather than save them. He said, wishing that he shouldn't have caved easily, he should have fought against this motion when it was set. However, because of his curiosity, and the need to protect his planet, he was easily manipulated into manufacturing such that had the potential to bring the end of the universe if its user wished it to happen. He had none to blame but himself. Now, because of my mistake, my son has to be involved in this mess. He thought, curse you Madara. Curse you for bringing my family and my home into a conflict you started. He hated that he couldn't do anything to stop the events happening on his planet, he hated that he had to send his son away because of his poor decisions. At least he could rest easy knowing that with this plan, his son would be safe and away from the grip of a power-hungry madman. Minato gazed at the vessel that held his child. He did what he had to. He could only hope that in time, his son would forgive his foolish mistakes. He took a deep breath. Kushina, everything is set, we need to say our last goodbyes to our son before we send him off. This is it. Begin transmission. My son, I apologize for not being able to raise you like your mother and I had hoped. My only wish is to pray that you're brought up by the right people who would no doubt take their time to love you as their own. My name is Minato of House L, and you're from the planet Krypton, a planet whose native inhabitants gain tremendous power from absorbing solar radiation of any yellow sun, or a blue sun. A small rocket appeared out of what looked to be a wormhole, and was now seen shooting across the cosmos, riding along the Milky Way system. It is with great regret I inform you that unlike your fellow Kryptonian including us, your mother and I, you will not be able to gain these abilities for an unknown amount of time. In its place however, you will receive an intellect far superior than any of those your age, and given time, it may develop into something greater if you so wished it. As parents, no matter the choices you make when using your gift, we'll always be proud of you regardless of the decision's future outcome. The baby inside the rocket twists and turns as it arrives and shoots into the Sol solar system before it passes straight through planet Pluto and is now approaching Neptune. Rest easy my child, live a full life, make friends, have a family, do anything you can to protect them as we protected you from the dangers of our planet. Know that we'll always be watching over you from the afterlife. The rocket shoots past planet Jupiter and is midway across Mars. Good luck my little maelstrom, and may the forces be with you throughout your life. This is Minato of Krypton signing off. The rocket silently breaks into Earth's atmosphere and shoots across the sky, passing through various oceans, islands, countries and continents before it finally approaches Japan. It passes through different countries' houses as it breaks through its border, before it finally arrives at its destination, Tokyo, a city currently having a nighttime fireworks celebration. It approaches an empty field and crashes into it. The field was owned by a wealthy businessman. End transmission. Years later, Jump City. Walking along the busy streets of Jump City was a young blonde male who looked to be speaking on a cell phone. He looked to be a teenager of 18 years old, possessing spiky blonde mane which seemed to defy gravity on his head, and a pair of cerulean blue eyes which looked to be one with much intelligence behind them. Over what looked to be a white shirt, he wore a black open-chested hooded sweatshirt, a pair of black and orange shorts, and finally, a pair of sandals. On his back was a red and golden orange backpack. He was also rolling a medium-sized, orange, traveling box on his left side. He seemed to look like a person who arrived from an airport, or he was going to one, though the conversation which he was currently having on his handset proved that it was the former rather than the later. Are you sure you're okay staying on your own for a while, brat? I don't want things to spiral out of control after everything that's happened. I'll be fine, you know. You don't exactly have to be checking up on me all the time. The blonde teen replied, knowing he was a 19-year-old male, and he was ranked as one of the smartest and most mentally capable people on the planet, so he definitely knew how to take care of himself. He definitely wasn't a small child anymore. So what if I just got over a bad breakup? So what if I may be a little bit hurt after all that Sasuke fiasco? It's the reason I came here to Jump City in the first place. It is something you should know by now. He said, remembering just who it was that suggested he should take a little vacation from home, that he should use this opportunity to go see how the other Whirlpool industry facilities operate. Sigh, fine. You win, Naruto. I guess you don't need me, an old hag like me, to worry about you all that much, huh? The voice on the receiving end, which sounded female, asked with a small laugh. You know it's not like that, Ba-chan. The blonde male, now identified as Naruto, sighed. I just wish that you'd stop treating me like a fragile object. I know you love me, just like mom and dad did, and I admit, there are times when I'm glad that you're around to take care of me after, well, you know. He hinted, referring to the death of his parents. What I really need now is some time to myself. I need to relax, you know. I've been swamped with too much work lately. He was putting it very lightly. His brilliance was a gift to him. Yes, and his parents made sure to help develop it even further. However, as much as it was a gift, it was also a curse, as with it, he was given the responsibility of watching over the progress of his parents' company following their death, as they were the one of the few they'd trusted to make sure the company doesn't fall into the wrong hands, that along with attending school and all the courses that came along, and of course that whole situation about Sasuke, everything put together was mentally taxing to any normal person. It's why he readily accepted the vacation once it was immediately granted to him. He snapped out of his thoughts for a brief moment to hail an SUV-type taxi. Tsunade's voice let out a small sigh. I know, brat, it's just that after losing both my parents, my brother, and my fiancé, you're all I have left. I just can't help myself, she responded, as she thought about how hard it was for her to cope after losing her brother, her fiancé, and finally, her parents. Following those events, she's had it a bit rough lately, and she was greatly upset that despite being one of the best doctors out there, she was unable to save all of their lives. Naruto was all she had left. I know, Susu. Believe me, I know. Naruto said, getting into the taxi and settling down a bit. Hold on for a moment, he told Tsunade. He looked up from his phone and then to the taxi driver and told him, the Leaf Sanctuary please, and take your time. I'm not in a hurry. He then resumed his conversation. Listen, I promise I'll call all right. And besides, you don't need to worry that much. I've got Ultron with me. He reassured, reminding Tsunade about Ultron, who was his personally handcrafted AI. It's also the most sophisticated AI in existence. He took great pride in that fact. Fine. Just please, take care of yourself, all right? Tsunade couldn't hide the plea in that tone. I'm not close to you, so I won't be able to heal you if things go south. I will. Love you, Susu. Love you to brat. I'll talk to you later, alright. Naruto hung his phone with a sigh of relief, after the line was cut on the other end. He then looked out the window as he drove by the different sights and landmarks of Jump City, and he's a bit impressed at what his eye spots. Not as impressive and advanced as the sights back home, but still, they're quite impressive. He mused. It's also quite peaceful here from what I've seen. Yeah, I can already tell that things around here are going to be boring. Trouble in Paradise, kid. He heard the taxi driver who had asked, and he looked up to notice that said driver was glancing at him through his mirror. No, not really, just an over-concerned relative that thinks I'm as fragile as glass, needed to get away from all of that and she won't stop complaining. He answered in a tone which seemed to say that he was upset about it, though if you listened closely, you could hear the fondness in said tone hidden in the falseness. Preaching the choir on that one. The taxi driver laughed. My folks wouldn't stop complaining about how I's too young to leave, how I's need to GE, a proper, schoolin'. Didn't listen. And look, me, I'm doin' my dream job. Well then, good for you. Naruto said, cringing each time he had heard the multiple grammar errors the driver made. I'm sure you're happy. You betcha. He heard the driver reply. Won't trade. Air bow, for nothing else. Naruto wished any sort of distraction would appear at that moment, which would force him to change his focus from the taxi driver and his abuse of the basic English language. His prayer was answered in the form of Ultron, his new best friend. Mr. Senju, my sensors are picking up an unknown object approaching at astonishingly high speeds. I have yet to determine if this object is friendly. Ultron, his most trusted PA and the best AI in the world, reported in a robotic male voice that sounded calm, cool and collected. Naruto let out a sigh of relief, before he grinned in excitement and quickly picked his belongings. Thanks for the lift, man. I'll stop here if you don't mind. He told the driver as he reached into his pocket and brought out the money needed, paid the driver after he stepped out of the SUV. He quickly stepped back and watched as the driver left him with a wave. The moment he noticed that he was in the clear, he snuck into the closest empty alley and dumped his box into the dumpster, not caring of the contents inside. Before he smirked and said, Ultron, please activate Protocol Arsenal. Understood, sir. Activating, please remain on standby while I activate your Arsenal suit. Naruto did as requested and properly fastened his backpack, while standing in attention, and then moments later, he was swallowed by what seemed to be a black and gold-plated armor, black and gold version of the Iron Spider armor, but not with the spider legs, though with the back compartment. Naruto Senju was gone, and in his place stood Arsenal, an armored hero about to set his debut today. Activation complete. Power cells are operating at 200% efficiency, weapons are on standby. I'm ready whenever you are. Good, it's great to see everything works as it should. Naruto's voice came out metallic as he spoke. He was excited that he finally got to test out his latest Arsenal suit. He had more of these back home, but they're all older versions and he wasn't able to make them into a travel-type suit, like he did with this, and unlike the models before it, this one was more durable, and it's an energy-absorbing model. He spent several hours working on this particular suit. Unlike the minimal amount of time he worked with the rest, it's a very special suit. Are you done admiring yourself? Because I seem to recall that there are more important things to do at this moment. Very funny. Naruto dryly remarked, mentally questioning why he made his AI one that could be sarcastic whenever it pleased. However, he knew that the AI was right. There was an object heading towards his general location, and if it makes impact, it could hurt the lives of many. He had to stop it. Ultron, I need you to pinpoint the impact area. Boom. Never mind. I think I figured it out. Naruto deadpanned, before he activated his rocket thrusters and burst off towards the scene of the explosion with a sonic boom, immediately after. He was upset that he let this happen. He couldn't believe that he let his admiration of himself get in the way of saving the lives of innocent civilians. He was ashamed. If anyone turned out to be hurt as a result of this, he wouldn't be able to look at himself in the mirror. Well then, let's just hope that no one got hurt. He thought, increasing the power to his thrusters. He needed to get to the impactor as fast as he could. Scene change. Arsenal arrived the scene and immediately went to work as he spotted the damages. Ultron, scan for any injured and nearby civilians. He ordered. We have to make sure that no one was hurt. He was now hovering in front of a big crater he no doubt felt was a result of the impact a few moments ago. There was nothing in it. This meant that whatever made the impact was either on the run or disintegrated on the spot. Also, scan the crater too for any traces of residual energy and if possible, track it. He added, after closely inspecting the crater. I have a feeling that our anthropomorphic suspect might be on the run. Affirmative. There are uninjured civilians within the vicinity, and the area has been evacuated. However, I do detect life signatures nearby, and one of them share the same energy readings as whatever was in that crater. Ultron reported him. Good. This was what he wanted to hear. Lead the way, buddy. Grayson, aka Red Robin, was currently on the ground, panting hard, as he looked up at the raging alien female in front of him. If anyone were to tell him that he wasn't supposed to be here in Jump and instead with Batman in Gotham, that person would wish he'd never met him. His main reason for coming here to Jump City was for independence, from said Dark Knight due to some unhandled comments and the unwanted way he was being treated by the hero. He was honestly having fun with no one telling him what to do or hovering over his shoulder the way Batman did, but however, he would admit that maybe he bit off more than he could chew. The alien girl, despite being as beautiful as she was far stronger and more of a skilled fighter than he anticipated. She easily overpowered him. She was able to counter every move he'd sent her with an equal amount of skill, however she did it more brute force. He was used to dealing with these types of villains. It was in the job description when he was working as Batman's sidekick. However, he wasn't used to dealing with one so skilled and controlled with their strength. I hate to say it, but maybe Batman was right. I'm not ready to run off on my own, he thought, as the alien girl effortlessly tossed a bus towards him. Too bad I won't be around much longer to let him know that he was right. He closed his eyes and waited for the impact. Not today. Smack. Sorry babe, can't let you hurt him. Robin opened his eyes and looked up to see someone in a black and gold suit of armor standing in front of him, easily lifting the bus that was meant to catch him. While it wasn't who he was expecting to save his life, he was glad that his life was indeed saved. Hey, you alright? He heard whoever it was in the suit ask. Yeah, and by the way, thanks. He answered, as he moved to get up, but he winced at the throbbing pain he felt on his right leg. Ouch, he grunted. Take it easy there, kid. He heard the armored man say, while he watched as the bus the armored hero held up was carefully set down beside him. I'm Arsenal. I'm a bit new to this town, but smart enough to know what's going on right now, so why don't you find somewhere to rest while I take care of her? Robin didn't have a chance to answer. Instead, his attention was directed to the raging alien girl as she roared and charged at what he assumed she had perceived to be a new threat, with a snarl on her pretty face. Rurg. Smack. Clank. He was initially surprised to see the armored hero, now identified as Arsenal, stand strong and unflinching as he took a hit after hit from the angry alien girl's handcuffs or whatever they were. You look strong, and I'm sure if it were another person that you hit, they wouldn't be standing now. He heard Arsenal say to the girl as she continued her fruitless assault, but my suit is made up of a metal that absorbs any kinetic and vibratory energy directed at it, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of what this suit can really do. In other words, you might as well give up now. I'm not someone you stand a chance at winning. He watched as Arsenal then placed his palm on the alien girl's stomach, before blasting her away from him, with some sort of energy-based blast he guessed. He a bit disappointed with how Arsenal was, yet at the same time, he was impressed with the science behind Arsenal's suit. Without any doubt, he could definitely see why the armored hero was as he was. If he listened right, the suit could take hits from Superman and could still stand without a scratch. Though this then brought up the silent question of the type of metal was being used, as he'd never heard of any metal with the properties Arsenal had listed. He closely inspected Arsenal and saw that on the center of his two hands laid a repulsor, which he guessed was the reason the alien girl was sent flying away like that. He could see all of the practical uses for tech like that, but he also wondered how smart the suit's mechanic was to have come up with such amazing tech. He recalled that only geniuses with an enormously high IQ like Evo, Lex Luthor, Bruce Wayne or T.O. Morrow could have access to that type of tech. He wondered which one of those scientists were sponsoring him. Definitely not Bruce. I would have been made aware if he's suddenly building a new suit with that type of metal and tech. He thought, before snorting. Or maybe not, I guess. Hey kid, you need a hand. He heard a different voice ask him. This one was also male, and he was really starting to get really annoyed with the way everyone he met lately had referred to him as kid the first time. You look like you need to see a doctor for that leg. Robin turned to see that it was a hooded male figure that asked him that question. He wasn't about to deny the help, and also, he needed to get out of the battle zone as fast as possible, so he answered, I'm fine, and no hospitals, but I would appreciate it if I had a little help clearing out of this area so that I can take care of my leg. He said, massaging his injured leg. He looked on as the hooded male nodded, before he was helped off the ground, just in time too, as the entire ground shook with a mighty quake before cracking under the pressure. He turned around and he was able to catch a glimpse of the handcuffs on the alien girl shattering, and he saw her hands being covered by a green energy sphere. He thought, oh dear, that looks like trouble, better hurry up and get this leg injury fixed as fast as I can and get back fight, that guy looks like he's going to need my help. He was injured, yes, but that definitely wouldn't mean that this was last time anyone would hear of Robin, the boy wondered. After all, if Batman can still fight after breaking his back, that means that to me, this should be nothing. Arsenal grunted. His suit was currently taking barrages upon barrages of green energy bullets shot at him from the now partly free alien girl. Energy storage reserves at 70% power and growing. Ultron's voice pointed out. Arsenal responded, thanks for the update, buddy, but let's not focus on that and focus on the matter at hand. We need to subdue our opponent before she hurts any more of the city, so any smart ideas? He asked. Maybe instead of fighting, you should try something else. Arsenal jumped a bit and the blue eyes behind his protective faceplate blinked in shock at the voice that just spoke to him. His eyes darted around. Hello? Is anyone there? He called out in the form of the question, looking for the owner of the voice. If there is, then you need get out of here. It's not safe, he said. He didn't want said owner getting hurt because he was careless. Sir, instead of focusing your attention elsewhere, don't you think you should eliminate the immediate threat? Arsenal refocused his attention to the fight as Ultron had pointed that particular fact out. Thanks, Ultron, you're a lifesaver, he said, quickly grabbing and restraining the alien girl when she had attempted to charge at him and tackle him down while he was distracted. By the way, did you pick up any life readings just moments ago? If you're talking about the 4 that I just picked up, then yes, I did. Ultron responded. However, you should note that one of them managed to completely hide from my sensors for a single moment. I believe this one has a form of teleportation. Noted. I'll look that up later. Arsenal said to his AI, before his eyes had shifted to the struggling prisoner and had spotted the handcuffs shackled on her hands. What if fighting her isn't the way to win this? What if he had finally connected the dots and his eyes widened slightly? He wasn't fighting a raging monster. He was fighting someone who was trying to free herself from whatever it was that bound her. She was only defending herself because she didn't want to go back to whatever cell it was she previously resided. Naruto, at that moment, knew what he had to do. Now if only she could just stay still and land so that he could get to work. Nearby, from a secure vantage point, Robin, as he tended to his leg, watched the proceedings happening below him. He had a mini med kit on his arm as he watched. He always made sure to pack 1 or 2 just in case of emergencies, and beside him stood the hooded male that helped him earlier. Thanks for the help and all, but I can take care of myself from now, he said to the hooded man, as he finished his leg. You don't need to stay behind and watch over me. Sorry kid, but you're not going anywhere with a leg like that, the hooded man retorted, crossing his hands over his chest with a huff in his tone. You're the one that refused to get admitted to a hospital, so I'm making it my responsibility to watch over you until your leg gets better. Listen, I appreciate the help, but I'm sure you know who I am. Of course I know who you are. Then you know that a mere leg injury shouldn't be enough to keep me down. I know who you are, and I don't care, the hooded male stated. Now, unless you want me to take you to the nearest hospital where they'll no doubt have to remove that mask of yours and tell the rest of the world just who it is that's under there, then you're going to have to stay put and listen. He yelled in frustration, however a cool voice spoke up. Maybe I can help. Robin and the hooded man looked to see that the one who spoke was a figure whose form was hidden under a blue hooded cloak. You can help. How? Robin, asked slowly. I can do magic. With Arsenal. Click. Clank. There. That should get rid of those. Arsenal took a step backwards after he said that. and when the hand restraints dropped on the ground. He watched as the alien girl looked at both her hands with an unreadable expression on her face while she carefully rubbed her two wrists. She looked calm enough to reason with now that she was free of the cuffs which bound her. Well, here's hoping that she's civil enough to answer his questions. He had thought to himself, while clearing his throat as the faceplate protecting his face retreated to reveal his face to the alien girl. Now tell me, he had started, however, his lips were sealed before he could finish his sentence. The extremely hot alien girl had kissed him full on the lips in a surprising twist. Yet, he was not one to ignore the gesture, so he quickly fixed his posture and returned her kiss. He could have sworn he heard her moan just now, though as the kiss was about to get steamy, she had pulled away from him with a small blush on her face. If you do not wish to be destroyed, you will leave me alone. She snapped, reining in her embarrassment, before taking off to the night skies in flight. Naruto blinked and licked his lips as he watched Starfire take off, and his faceplate fell over his face. He said to himself, well, there's something you don't see every day. He was about to take off after her, to make sure she wasn't up to anything dangerous, as the moment he'd freed her, she was now considered his responsibility, but then behind his lenses, his eyes spotted a certain something that made him stop. Okay, you definitely don't see that every day. He was looking at a ship, but not just any ship, it's a ship looking like it was made for destroying. Was that a freaking cannon? Okay. Now that's not good. Multiple hostiles detected on board that vessel, sir. Ultron's voice reported. My sensors are picking up well over 100 unknown life forms, all heavily armed. I suggest a temporary retreat. Arsenal never actually said anything in response to his AI's suggestion. Instead, he was calculating the odds of success, but he noticed that something was amiss. Ultron, are you able to make contact with Justice League Watchtower? He asked, wanting to know why the Leaguers weren't responding to this matter. I have already made contact, however it seems that the Justice League are unavailable at the moment. Arsenal quietly pondered as he listened to the hollow message that was transmitted over Jump City. He was wondering why the Justice League of Heroes weren't responding to an invasionary fleet of this size. He would have thought that at least Superman or Flash would have been here to handle this situation. Looks like I'm going to have to deal with this myself then, he said, as the hollow message had ended. But first, I'm going to have to search for our missing alien damsel in distress. Then it looks like you're in luck, since we're after the same thing. Arsenal turned around to see figures walking towards him. He immediately noticed Robin and was surprised that his leg was healed. And he was unable to recognize the other two males on each of his side. One was a large muscled being that pretty much covered himself up well with a hoodie, while the other was wearing a purple and black attire with a mask covering most of his face to show little of his green skin. Arsenal did a double take at the last figure behind the three males in a very familiar blue cloak as his eyes passed over to them, and suddenly, he was filled with dread as different images flashed before his eyes, images of a time he'd long forgotten, images of a person he thought he'd never see again. Raven, he whispered to himself, Raven, is that you? He watched as the blue-cloaked figure had shyly turned away from him with a look of shame on their face. He didn't let that stop him, however. He hesitantly walked up to the figure to confirm his suspicions. He reached up and pulled down the hood of the cloak, and as the hood fell down revealing a very familiar face he always perceived as beautiful, no matter the consequence, the world around him stopped. He was suddenly swimming with a whirlwind of emotions. Hope, happiness, excitement, relief, disappointment, anger, and finally betrayal. He took a step back. He didn't want his emotions to make him do something rash, so he did the next best thing. He activated his rocket thrusters and blasted off as quickly as possible, missing the look of longing sent his way by the girl he had left behind. That was so cool. Scene change. Sir, are you alright? Your focus has been rather off. I'm fine, Ultron. I just saw a face I never thought I'd see again. Naruto said. His faceplate was off of his face and his expression was one of detachment and recollection while his mind was still reeling in shock at seeing the one person he'd never thought he'd see again. His first friend, once best friend, and finally, the one who once held his heart within the palms of each of her two hands, Rachel Roth, aka Raven. He couldn't believe that she came back after she had disappeared all those years ago. He wanted to know why she'd left in the first place. He wanted to know if it was because of that, But, now was not the time to question her. He had a city, and by extension, a world, to save, and his focus needed to be on the current mission, to find the prisoner he'd set free. Mr. Senju, I have hacked into the city's public wireless network server, gained control of all security cameras within the vicinity, and managed to locate our resident prisoner. Send me the current GPS on our target's location. Naruto ordered, stopping above a building. He received an instant alert and brought his hand up to his face, and as he did, a hollow imagery popped up over his gauntlet, showing him a detailed map digitized of Jump City, thanks to Whirlpool Industries satellite. Then suddenly a red dot appeared on a certain location and it was flashing constantly. Beep, beep. He immediately used the zoom features of the map to get a better fix of his target's location, and once he was able to pinpoint the building his target was hiding in, he smirked. Got you. After he had dismissed the map, he increased the power to his thrusters and took off to his new destination and arrived in record time, and once he did, his eyes spotted the scorched section of the building. He immediately flew towards it and scanned for any familiar energy signature. Looks like our runaway has been here, he stated, once he compared the results with what he had on his files and walked through the hole and into the dimly lit room after. He looked around, and immediately, he spotted the target he was looking for, wildly scarfing anything eatable within her reach. Okay. Wow, slow down girl, it's not like the food is going to run away from you. He joked, hoping that it went unheard. Unfortunately, his joke wasn't as silent as he hoped it would be. The girl had suddenly stopped her scarfing, and turned to look at him with a snarl on her face as each of her hands held green energy orbs. Why are you here? I specifically asked you to leave me alone. Hey, now calm down, we don't want any of us getting hurt. Naruto said, waving his hands in the universal motion for surrender, while carefully stepping up to her. Let's all take a deep breath and be calm about this. Remember, I'm the one that set you free. We're friends now, right? Friends are nice to each other, right? Nice, the alien girl sneered. Her green eyes were flashing angrily. It is not a word that is spoken with familiarity in my planet. Closest is weak. Well, around here, nice means nice. Naruto reasoned quite strongly, and he was about to say more, but he paused as another voice spoke up from behind him. Yeah, and if you want us to keep being nice, you're going to have to tell us why the Lizard King took you prisoner. Naruto obviously didn't appreciate being interrupted when he was working, and sometimes, he tended to snap at those who had done the deed, but once he saw that the alien girl in front of him had calmed down a bit, at least enough to actually listen to reason, he had eased up and welcomed the interruption. This time at least, though he was a bit surprised at the words he heard the alien utter. Not prisoner, I am prize. She had started. The Gordanians deliver me to the Citadel, to live out my days as a servant. And the Citadel are not nice. This made Naruto wonder what kind of people these Citadel were if they kept prisoners as slaves. Definitely not the good kind, he thought. However, he was smart enough to not place the entire world, or universe, as black and white. He knew different races had different traditions. He wasn't one to question it if said tradition demanded the safety of said races, but if it didn't, and if innocents suffer because of said tradition, then that's when he'd speak out. So far from what he had heard, the alien girl was an innocent in this, he assumed, and if so, then her being prisoner, or prize of any sort, was out of the question. Then you're not going with them, not if I had anything to say about it. Naruto was snapped out of his thoughts as he heard that. Whoa, hold it right there, traffic light. Who died and made you the boss? He rudely asked, stepping in front of the Robin's form. Robin looked up at Naruto with an annoyed look on his face. Can we not do this now? He asked. Naruto refused. Look, I appreciate the help, I really do, but I was the one that freed her, technically that makes her my responsibility. He replied with a frown. And I don't remember asking for any one of you guys' help. Robin groaned. Ugh, why the heck are you being so difficult? I'm being difficult because I know I didn't ask for your help. Naruto snapped. And I don't care. Robin snapped, poking Naruto's chest at each syllable. This situation affects all of us whether we like it or not, and we need all the help we can get if we're going to come out of this in one piece. Guys, can we please not fight among ourselves right now? The little guy's right, the hooded male said, walking to stand next to said little guy in question. We need to focus at the matter at hand, and that means we all need to work together to find a way to send the invaders packing. Naruto huffed and Robin shot a smirk his way, making him glower at the boy wonder, though it wasn't seen because his face wasn't visible, before he deflated. Fine. He grumbled. But if we're going to work together, then I'm the one leading this operation. Robin didn't accept this and was about to demand to know why he should lead when they were clearly other more capable leaders around. Before he could even speak, however, a very loud explosion suddenly rocked the building they currently stood in. Boom. The walls around them exploded inwards and the roofs had collapsed as a result of the structural weakness, and when the gathered dust had cleared completely, not only had Robin seen the army of the snarling lizard aliens which surrounded them, he had also seen that he, and those he'd brought with him including the alien girl, all stood huddled under a blue field of energy courtesy of Arsenal. He couldn't tell what expression the armored hero wore because of his faceplate. "You're welcome," Arsenal had said, as he dismissed the field. "Look, can we agree to settle this issue later and deal with them first?" Robin smirked. "I don't see the problem in that," he said. "Cool." And with that all said and done, the new team of 6 had charged at the army with determined looks on their faces and easily took out each forces they encountered with their own unique strengths and fighting styles. With the combined forces, the Gordanian army never stood a chance. Robin, the boy wonder, showed why he was ready to leave the Batman's guidance with his skills, martial arts and determination. Left and right he threw batarangs of varying sizes and types at his opponents with precise targeting and easily manipulated his body's movements to his advantage whenever it seemed he was about to be overpowered by one or two of the Gordanians' forces. For an experienced fighter like him, this seemed to be as easy as reading a book was to a child. He didn't slow down or waver in strength because he knew if he did, then the entire city would fall. Nearby, Arsenal was moving just as quickly, if not more so, as Robin was, and he easily took down each of his opponents with an excellent show of not only his unique style of martial arts, but also just what it was his suit of armor could do if really challenged. He fired powerful energy beams in every direction with the repulsor cannons built on his arms at each Gordanian's caught within his viewing range, and those who tried attacking him with surprise and brute force were schooled on just how durable his suit was, as the kinetic energy gained behind each impact were all absorbed and converted only to be thrown back at them a few moments later with twice the initial strength behind each of their blows. Arsenal was definitely having fun testing out his new suit, that much could be seen with how much excitement he was currently showing. "Come on, don't tell me this is the best you can do," he taunted. "Is this the army that's supposed to invade the Earth? Now that's just sad." He smirked as he got the reaction he had wanted when he saw the Gordanians getting even angrier moments later. "That's right, get angrier and make this all easier for me," he thought, before he fired more energy beams at his opponents while the hooded teen and the elfish midget were working together in another side of the fight. The two looked up from their fight and saw as Arsenal took on more of the Gordanians single-handed. With stars in his eyes, the elfish teen exclaimed, "That is so cool. Beast Boy, or whatever you call yourself, focus." The hooded teen shouted, taking out the Gordanians, who was about to take out the one he identified as Beast Boy, with a sonic blast from his arm cannon with his sleeve rolled up. Beast Boy, hearing his name being called, caught himself and remembered there was a battle going on and there were lives to be saved, so used his unique animal metamorphic powers to trick and overpower his opponents however he saw fit. He used their confusion and misdirection to his advantage as it's what he was taught by one of his teachers when he was on the Doom Patrol. He still remembered the lessons till now. Meanwhile, in their own corner, the figure, now fully distinguished as female, and was also identified as Raven by Naruto, showed an admirable amount of skill in the mental arts known as telekinesis, despite her telekinetic grip being a bit different than most who studied in said art, and fully capitalizing on this, she overwhelmed her opponents, usually by dropping objects on them, and when that didn't work, she'd either use her ability to fling her opponent away or blast them away. Any one of the three worked, and despite this, she kept a calm look on her face, but her eyes told a different story however, one that related to the one hero she kept glancing to, Arsenal. Finally, the alien girl seemed to have swarms of the Gordanians tailing after her as she flew away, trying to evade their electric shocks while fighting back to prevent herself from being captured. At least that was her plan. Smack. Until her body was sent spiraling down to the earth following a hard smack to her face she was caught unprepared for. Naruto saw this from his position and immediately flew to the rescue. He caught her falling body in time and erected an energy field around them to ward off any attacks by the Gordanians as the alien girl recovered. Are you all right? He asked her. Yes, the alien girl said with a smile. Your help is much appreciated. Well, I'm glad to be of service, and sorry for what happened a few minutes back. Naruto said, apologizing for how he acted in front of her towards Robin. By the way, I actually never got your name. He added, ignoring the banging on his energy field. The alien girl looked down in thought. My name is Coriander, but on your planet's translation, I believe it is called. She took a small pause trying to get the words out of her mouth. Starfire. Starfire, huh? That's an awesome name. Coriander is still good as well, but think Cory could sound better. Naruto smiled. I'm Naruto. Pleased to meet ya. The pleasure is mine, but I believe that we have other things to concern ourselves with at this moment. The now identified Starfires words rang true as at the moment, the two of them were in the middle of a large fight. Well then, you ready to get back in the fight? Naruto asked, smirking behind his mask and clenching both his hands, in preparation for round 2 of the fight, with Starfire setting up her balls of energy beside him with a smirk on her face. Definitely. Unfortunately for the two of them, but rather fortunately for the city, the forces had begun retreating back to their mothership, whose particle cannon was about ready to fire. The 6 heroes had gathered once together and looked on in worry as they noticed this, then suddenly the hollow image from before had appeared. Foolish earthlings, it started. I warned you of what would happen should you interfere with my mission. Now you along with this city will perish and there's not a thing any of you can do to stop it. The transmission was terminated shortly after that, and the result? A round of arguments between Robin, Starfire, Beast Boy and the hooded muscular teen, while Naruto had watched as the cannon had fired a bright red beam which was now heading straight towards Jump City. This is definitely bad, Naruto thought. Raven hesitantly walked to stand next to Naruto. She wanted to say something, but her words got caught in her throat. She said something else instead. I could teleport everyone out of the city, but by the time I'm done, that beam would have already destroyed the city and everyone that remained. She silently cursed herself for being so afraid to confront him. Naruto ignored her. His mind was focused on formulating a plan to stop the laser before it could hit. He needed to think up something that had a 70% chance of success, and with the little time he had left, he only had one option that might just work at the risk of his life. It's a risk I'm willing to take. If I didn't make it, at least I'll get a chance be with mom and dad. He thought to himself. Ultron, can my suit absorb an energy deposit of that size? He quietly asked his AI. Raven's eyes snapped open as she perfectly heard his question, and her head snapped towards him. Naruto, you can't. It is unadvisable to do so, Mr. Senju. The arsenal suit has yet to completely adjust to the energy you acquired moments ago. Naruto frowned. Sorry, but there's no time for that. He replied. Naruto, why? Naruto didn't listen. He quickly activated his rocket thrusters and took off towards the approaching laser with a determined look on his face. All right, suit. Let's see just how much energy you can absorb. He was right in front of the approaching laser beam in minutes and stood his ground with his hands spread apart. This is gonna sting, he thought, before he braced himself and then took the full brunt of the laser's hit before he yelled in agony, arg. He instantly realized the plan wasn't going to be as easy as he thought, while he felt the impact of the laser's blast. Error. Error. Ultron said while the suit was starting to fritz. Naruto. Arsenal. The cries came from the 5 heroes watching this from down below, as each of them had looked on in horror as their ally seemingly perished, unable to stand up to the strength of the laser beam. However, soon they all saw something odd, and one by one, they all noticed that while the beam was getting smaller and smaller, a glow was shining in the trunk of the laser blast. Instantly, the group had realized the glow was Arsenal Naruto, and this meant that not only was he alive, but whatever it was he was doing to save the city, it was working. This brought back hope to them all, including the citizens of Jump City whom were watching this. Hey, what's that up there stopping the laser? A citizen asked. A citizen answered, is that a robot? Maybe it could be a man wearing a robot suit. A third citizen added. Who or whatever it is, I don't care. As long as they keep doing what they're doing and this city is safe, then they're all right in my book. With that came a unanimous cry of agreement followed by a repeated chanting of, Robot Man, over and over again. Robot man. Please. That's weak. Naruto grunted in thought despite feeling more than 1,000,000 megawatts of electricity running through him as he continued to absorb the laser beam's energy until he was completely done with that task. Arsenal has a better ring, too. Armor systems shutting down. That was the last message he heard from Ultron as his suit had slowly began to retract into its default mode while his consciousness slowly faded and his body dropped down towards the earth below him now that the previous threat had been eliminated. In quick response to this, both Raven and Starfire flew towards Naruto in hopes of catching him before he hit the pavement. Starfire was the faster one among the two and she was able to catch Naruto's body in time. Raven breathed out a sigh of relief at this, and she was even more relieved to hear him breathing. He was all right. Starfire helped land Naruto's body safely down to earth, with Raven behind her. She looked at his stilled form with a worried expression on her face, unhappy with herself that this was all caused by her and she was powerless to stop it. Once settled down, his suit finished collapsing onto its default mode as the rest of the heroes arriving to show them all of what Naruto fully looked like underneath. It appeared that he had regular clothing underneath the arsenal armor, but the heroes noticed that it was mostly burned off due to the heat and blast of the particle beam and underneath what remained. He wore a skin-tight metallic cloth of sorts that looked like slim armor that was primarily black with glowing yellow lines running across the attire to appear like circuitry. The suit covered just about every part of his body but was cut off at the neckline, and also there were cut off on the fingers to make them appear like fingerless gloves. The suit practically helped show Naruto's Olympic swimmer-like body of his slim form with his muscles. The surprising part of the tight suit, however, wasn't the design, but it was the emblem that they'd all spotted, which seemed to be glowing brightly on the center of his chest, that showed a pentagon with a very angular S inside of it to look vaguely similar to Superman and Supergirl's emblems. That emblem on his chest, does that mean that this guy's related to both Superman and Supergirl? The hooded muscular male asked, voicing everyone else's thoughts aside from Starfire. I don't think so. Robin answered with a frown. I've seen him nowhere around either of them. He said, knowing that this was indeed the first time he met this guy who was now apparently a Kryptonian. That's because he's related to neither. Raven answered. He's from Krypton and he's of the House of El, but he's not from this dimension apparently, and I don't think Superman and Supergirl's parents exist in his home reality. And how would you know that? Robin asked, directing the group's attention to her. Well, the two of us sort of know each other, from when we were kids. Raven hesitantly answered, before quietly adding, well, that and the small fact that he showed me the shuttle that brought him here. If you two are so close, then why was he acting like a jerk earlier? A confused Beast Boy asked Raven. Raven shied into herself. It's complicated. Who is this super man and super girl you mention? I am not familiar with any of them whatsoever. Starfire asked innocently, since she has the feeling these two beings are of great importance. Robin hummed. Well, Superman and Supergirl are supposed to be the last two remaining Kryptonians after their home planets Krypton and Argon got destroyed, even though there are still some Kryptonians that run around every now and then, you know, as villains and whatnot. He explained, before he heard a groan from below him and immediately turned to the source. The others had heard it too and they all turned to the source as Robin had done, and all had noticed that Naruto was starting to finally wake up. This indeed surprised some of them. The hooded male asked, seriously, how tough is this guy? To take a hit like that and still come out okay? Hey, he's Kryptonian, they're strong enough to handle stuff like that. Beast Boy said, before a look of confusion appeared on his face. Come to think of it, if he's Kryptonian, then why does he need that armor in the first place? Because unlike other Kryptonians, I don't get awesome powers from absorbing yellow sun radiation. Naruto tiredly said, holding his head as he sat up from his bed, before he looked around. What happened? Did we win? Foolish earthlings. An all too familiar voice snarled. You think this day is yours because of a minor setback? Think again. Within mere moments, my Jupiter cannon will be online and ready to fire, and when it does, your city will fall one by one. Oh, will that guy just shut up? I'm starting to get tired of just listening to him babble on and on like that. Naruto muttered, before he realized that his suit was in its default state after he had noted that he wasn't wearing it and his vision wasn't clouded by the electronics he would usually see with his helmet on. Ultron, I need an update on the Arsenal Mark 7 armor stat. Naruto ordered, pressing his fingers to his ears and ignoring the looks he received from the others. Affirmative. The arsenal suit is currently offline. Suit configuration mode in progress. Thanks Ultron. Let me know when it's ready to be operational again. Naruto said, before he finally noticed the other teen heroes looking at him with varied expressions on each of their faces. Sup. He cheerfully waved. Dude, that was freaking awesome. Beast Boy exclaimed in excitement with literal stars shining in his eyes, hopping in front of Naruto's face. You gotta tell me how you did that, man. I would if I could, but at the moment, I can't. Naruto answered, pulling away from Beast Boy as he did. Ah. The purple and black clad hero said as he pouted and kicked the ground like he was kicking a can. Oh joy. Starfire yelled in relief, giving Naruto a bone-crushing hug. I am relieved that you are not harmed. Me too, Star. Naruto wheezed, slowly patting Starfire's back while feeling the air rush out of him. But seriously, can you let go? I think I hear my ribs cracking. He wheezed out. Starfire quickly let go of Naruto as she heard that she might be causing him more pain, and Naruto coughed a bit before finally letting out a breath of fresh air. Phew. Raven wanted to say something to him, like shout out how she was scared that he would be injured far beyond recognition or worse, he could have been killed, however she couldn't do it like before, and her words had got caught in her throat, so she did the next best thing and saw all of this from the sidelines. Robin cleared his throat. Listen, Arsenal, I'm glad that you're alright, but until we get rid of those guys then there's no reason to celebrate. He pointed to the ship hovering ominously over them. Any ideas? I say we ambush them from the inside. Naruto suggested. Take them by surprise and send their ship either sailing into orbit or blowing it up. I'm sure I can handle that part. As much as I would like that, I'm afraid I can't let you come with us on that mission. Robin said. You're too injured and your suit is offline. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that, before he stretched his right hand as a slight red glowing sphere surrounded it, similar to the black spheres that appeared on Raven's hands when she used her telekinesis. He aimed it at a car twice his size and gripped the air within the sphere. In response to this, the car crushed under an invisible pressure, before it was sent rocketing up into space. He pulled his arm back. Naruto smirked. What was that about me being too injured to fight? Okay, you're in. Robin said, impressed. But how do we get on board? They'd see us coming from a mile away if we chose to fly. I can teleport us in. Raven had said, shifting the attention towards her. It's one of my powers, she shyly added, not meeting the eyes of any of her teammates. Alright then, it seems we have a start of a plan. Robin said as he motioned for the others to listen. Moments later, Gordanian's ship. Within one of the few hallways of the Gordanian's mothership, two Gordanians, who were on guard duty, had calmly walked by, unaware that as they did, a large shadow had appeared on the ground behind them. The shadow rose up from the ground into a dome, and as it had vanished, 6 familiar heroes stood in its place. Beast Boy shivered. That dark energy stuff gives me the... He stopped before he went any further as his eyes then shifted to Raven, who was looking at him. I mean, it's cool, he said, scratching the back of his head in embarrassment. He had let out a sigh of relief when Raven's judging stare shifted from him. Robin ignored Beast Boy's fumble and looked at his team. Guys, we need to get to the firing control as fast as possible. He said. We don't have any more time to waste. He left shortly after that, and most of the others followed after Robin except Raven, who lingered behind, and Naruto, who, while still in his bodysuit, had noticed Raven lingering behind. Wow, he sighed, looking at Raven bitterly. You never get tired of abandoning people when they least expect it, do you? Raven flinched. Whatever, he mumbled, it's something I've come to expect from you anyways, it's not like you'll change anytime soon. He shook his head and then walked away shortly after saying that. Not once did he look back to see the guilty and self-loathing look on Raven. He never knew that she didn't wish for things to be like this. She had finally gotten the opportunity to see her best friend again. This was her chance at redemption, to apologize for what had happened, and to answer the question that were left unanswered between them. For the last few years since she had left him, she had played countless of scenarios on how she should apologize. Many of those scenarios were optimistic, where he would listen and then they would go back to how things were back then. But this was her worst scenario, where he didn't wish to do anything with her. This game has gone on long enough. I'll get him to listen to me no matter what. She'd finally gained her free passage rights from the monks of Azarath, and Earth was the first place she chose to come to when she had left. Despite her being on Earth was for a completely different reason officially, she couldn't let this grand opportunity to go to waste. She decided that after all of this was over, she would finally have a talk with her friend and apologize for what she had done and also give him the answer to the question he had asked all those years ago. She wouldn't let some alien sweep him off his feet. Raven shook her head, ignoring the last insult, as she breathed out a small sigh and she put on her hood. Just need to deal with this first, she mumbled, before she teleported out of the room via shadow teleportation. She needed to control her emotions if she was going to get this right. She didn't need some redheaded bitch messing up her game. Gordonian's control room. Lord Trogan, the weapon has reached full power, and is ready to fire once more. A Gordonian soldier reported, one sitting behind one of the many control panels which was controlling the Jupiter cannon, and behind him, a throne-like chair had turned around, revealing a Gordonian that seemed to be the leader of those assigned to Earth. Then begin the firing sequence and double its power, he ordered. This time, we'll make sure that whatever it was that stopped us before wouldn't able to do so again. The Gordanian that gave the report did as asked and was configuring the settings to do as requested by their commander, who stood and watched the entire proceedings with a smirk on his face, before. Boom. The wall behind him had exploded inwards, sending large chunks of its pieces all around the room. On the opposite side of the wall stood 6 of the teen heroes, each with a determined look on their faces. You're going to have to belay that order, soldier, Naruto said in his best mock general voice mode. You see, I just moved into Jump City, and I'd rather not have it destroyed by the likes of you, Naruto said, stretching his hands towards the Gordonian that was in control of the firing systems, while hovering on the air with Starfire and Raven on each of his 2 sides. He was doing this without his suit of armor, as a familiar red energy sphere had covered his stretched hand. However, what you can do is step aside and allow me to have complete control over your ship. He swiped his hand to the side, and in response to this, the bodies sitting behind the control panels were casually flung out of their seat. Naruto looked to his team and ordered, you guys keep the bad guys occupied while I try figure out the controls on this thing. Understood. We'll buy you all the time you need. Naruto flew to the control panel after he said that and began working, while the remaining 5 had kept busy covering him as he worked, easily taking on any one of the Gordanians head on. And as he worked, he noted how advanced their technology was, rather impressive looking. Of course, it was nothing compared to Kryptonian technology, but it was certainly centuries ahead of Earth's current technology. He could certainly see himself using some of it to upgrade his suit. There was always room for improvement. Ultron tried to download anything of use. He ordered his AI, while placing his backpack on the dashboard of the systems. And make sure none of the files are corrupted, he added. Will do, Mr. Senju. Naruto smirked at that, before he turned back to see if the rest of the heroes were done with the grunts. He had noted that Robin had already tied them all up, and he had noted that the muscular teen with the hood was actually half man, half machine. Wow, a cyborg, he said, impressed. Not bad. Looks like you have a lot of weaknesses though, on your hardware and probably software, could definitely use some work. Weaknesses? What the heck are you talking about? I'm as strong as I can be, there ain't nothing weak about this, the cyborg stated, flexing his muscles and doing a pose as he did so while Naruto shook his head with an amused look on his face. Dude, one of the many things I've been able to do since I was a 4-year-old kid is being able to interface with technology. Naruto deadpanned. Don't know why at first, but when I'd found out, well, let's just say that I was shocked. He shrugged. Point is, I can communicate with any technology I want, and from what I've seen about yours, it's in pain, bro. You need to update most of your systems and I can help with that. If you can do what you say you do, then how come you haven't done anything about the firing systems on this ship? Huh, the cyborg challenged. Oh, that. Well, because I was busy downloading anything useful for my tech, Naruto said with a shrug, before placing his hand on the dashboard of the control panel. There, that's all there is to it. He removed his hands when he felt he was done with what he needed to do and put on his backpack. Now we need to leave because in a few minutes, this ship is going to hyperspace into the sun. Dude, you're planning on frying them? Beast Boy yelled, shocked at the move. I'm sure they'll wake up and evacuate once they realize their lives are in danger and they can't change their ship's course. Naruto shrugged, ignoring the scanthing look Robin had sent him. He took his backpack and placed it on his back and looked at Raven expectantly, and just like as they had arrived, the team had left via shadow teleportation, and just in time too, because just if they had wasted another second, they would sure have perished along with the ship. Hollow message transmission point. Minutes later. That's quite a view. Someone should build a house around here. Or a tower. After the entire night's work, the team of 6 now stood on an uninhabited, void of both plant life and human life, island, watching the sun as it rose up into the skies, indicating the start of a brand new day. It was something that they all needed, something that reminded all of them of what they were fighting for all night, so that the citizens of Jump City could live to see a brand new sunrise. It was worth it if you asked any of them, and it was one of the reasons why one Naruto Senju had made the decision that marked the very beginning. Quote. Guys, what we all did here together, it made a difference when it seemed that there wasn't any hope. Today, we became that hope, the hope that this city needs should it ever fall into the same darkness that it faced earlier today, Naruto had said, while looking at each one of his new team with a look of determination. Today, we made a difference as a team, one which I'd not mind working with for the remainder of my stay in Jump City, a team of heroes that could be greater than the Justice League, and this island here could be our main base of operations. A team, huh? That sounds awesome. Beast Boy said, grinning. Sure, I wouldn't mind being on a hero team. Oh, how glorious. I am so excited to be making the new friends. Starfire had said, with an excited look on her face. She had gotten rid of most of what she wore the time she came to this planet, and now, she wore an outfit which alluring enough to get men drooling anywhere she walked. I guess I could work with a team, as long as I get to be the leader. Robin had mused. County leader Robin, since you probably have the most experience out of any of us. Naruto corrected, but it's nice to see that you all are on board with my idea. We'll all need a form of communication if we're going to be working on a team, Mr. Smart Guy. Cyborg had said. Do you have any plans for that? Of course I do. What do you take me for? Naruto asked, sounding insulted, before pulling out 3 pairs of Bluetooth devices from his backpack. I made sure to have a way for us to talk with one another if we need help. Just one click and the call connects. It's a short-term mode of communication until I can whip up something more state-of-the-art, after I finish working on our headquarters, of course. He explained, as he had handed each one of his new teammates the earpieces. Working on our new headquarters. How you going to do that? You some kind of billionaire or something? Cyborg had asked. Naruto smirked in response. Something like that, added with the small part of me being a genius inventor. He quipped. But what are we going to be called? Raven had asked. Ooh, what about the Teen Titans? Beast Boy suggested excitedly. Actually, I was thinking something more along the lines of the Titans. Naruto had said with a hum, so I guess you're not that far off. Robin smiled. The Titans, huh? Intimidating. I like it. Naruto smiled and looked up at the sky. When there's trouble, you know who to call. Sue, any idea when the boss man's going to show up? Beast Boy asked. I'm starting to get really hungry. He whined. Cyborg slapped the back of Beast Boy's head. Dude, we just ate pizza 5 minutes ago, he told the changeling. And we've been here in under 3. Learn to be patient, bro. After all, patience is a virtue and all that crap. Since the Gordonian invasion, a few months had passed in Jump City, and the heroes of the night had gone through with their agreement and remained in city since that day, as one team, saving said city from the various criminals that showed up either on a daily or weekly basis. Because they all had lacked a base of operations, their saving of the city was usually done individually or in team pairs, usually consisting of either Beast Boy and Cyborg, Robin and Cyborg, or Beast Boy and of course Raven, and through this. However, each of the individual Titans had all made names for themselves, names which the citizens of Jump City were all familiar with by now. Arsenal, Starfire, Robin, Cyborg, Beast Boy, and Raven, and even though some of the Titans were more liked than the rest, with Arsenal being in the lead for the popularity poll, if there was indeed one, their deeds had left a positive review on them both individually as heroes and as a unit. As for personal lives though, the Titans had decided to get to know one another to improve themselves as a unit. Beast Boy and Cyborg found out that they had a lot in common and became best friends almost in an instant. Both Raven and Robin had become something of a sibling to each other as they both make each other smile and happy. And because Starfire didn't have a place to stay until the tower was built, and she was of course still technically his responsibility, Naruto and Starfire had hung out a lot. In fact, those seeing them would often mistake the two for a couple, much to the ire of some and the amusement of others, but at the moment, this never really bothered their teamwork. I don't care about patience and all that nonsense. Beast Boy muttered, crossing his hands over his chest with a pout on his face. Cyborg looked at his green animal buddy and sighed. It was always like this with him. Well, I'm staying, and if you want to go home and play video games on your own, then go. I'm not the one telling Arsenal you decided to ditch on his orders. He had a lot of respect for the armored hero, especially more after several of his systems were upgraded. If it weren't for Arsenal, he was sure that he wouldn't be stronger and faster than he once was. Sure, then he was a tank, but that was then, and if anything, his systems were as slow as a turtle. Compared to now, he could not only interface with systems faster now than before, his upgrades also included new abilities for him. Camouflage mode, both civilian and stealth, EMP emission, flight via rocket thrusters and so on. He liked his upgrades, and unlike Beast Boy and some others, he knew why Arsenal asked for the team to be here. Trust me, bro. I've been working with him from time to time since we met each other, and I can tell that he wouldn't ask us all to be here if whatever he was going to say wasn't at all important. Cyborg's right, Beast Boy, you have to be patient. Robin's voice had said, suddenly appearing from nowhere and startling Beast Boy and Cyborg a bit. Despite being absent most of the time when Jump City needs saving, he's proven that he can be trusted. It's not his fault that he's not been around saving the city as much as he should have, Raven's voice had coolly said, defending Arsenal's absence. He's just been really busy these past few months, and I'm sure it has something to do with the sudden disappearance of the small island which the invaders had used to transmit their message over the city. Beast Boy and Cyborg turned to see that Robin and Raven had arrived at literally the same time. Both, like them, Beast Boy and Cyborg hadn't changed their outfits since joining the team. In all, they pretty much looked the same, but that's not really important right now. Yeah, I still don't understand how that happened. Beast Boy had grumbled. I mean, how does an island suddenly disappear like that? He was confused as to how it happened and why no one was even bothering to comment on that. Not even the mayor of Jump City had reported foul play. Don't think too much into it, BB, I'm sure it'll turn up. Cyborg said before looking around. But where's Starfire? Isn't she usually the first to these things? He asked. She's been spending most of her time with Arsenal since she arrived, have you forgotten? Robin had said. His voice and expression did well to hide the jealousy he felt towards the armored hero for having Starfire's attention. His crush on her wasn't obvious to all, but to those smart enough to notice it, it was there, and beside him, Raven likewise felt a spark of jealousy towards the alien girl in question as Robin mentioned that. Whatever, let's just wait for them, but they better show up quickly. I have important books to get back to, she said, knowing it was the jealousy speaking, and ignoring as light bulbs exploded below her because of said jealousy. She missed as the others threw her a confused glance before looking back at each other. She was lamenting at her numerous lost opportunities she had as she tried to speak with Naruto, opportunities lost because of Starfire. She disliked how the alien girl was always by Naruto's side near 24/7, and when she wasn't by his side, Naruto would be busy working on one thing or the other with Cyborg, thus pulling her, Raven, further and further away from him. This is pointless, she thought, feeling that at this rate, she'd never be able to get to Naruto before he showed up on that day. She knew that Starfire meant well and didn't have no idea of what she was doing, but that's what made it even worse in her opinion. Just take a few deep breaths, meditate, calm your mind. Cyborg, Robin and Beast Boy all looked at Raven with a worried glance. Okay, seriously, what's eating her? Cyborg whispered to Robin. Robin pulled closer to Cyborg and whispered back, she's been trying really hard to talk to Arsenal, but he's either with you or Starfire to give her the time she needs. He frowned. It's been messing with her mind for some time, upsetting her, and she's been getting gloomier and gloomier because of it. Why doesn't Arsenal just talk to her? Beast Boy asked in a whisper, scratching his head in confusion. Why's he being such a jerk about it? Raven knows why, but she refuses to tell me each time I ask. Robin had answered, looking at Raven with a worried glance. We should do something. I don't like seeing her upset like this. Us. Why do we have to do anything? Cyborg furiously whispered. It has nothing to do with us. He protested, not wanting to get into someone else's personal life. It has everything to do with a cyborg. Robin had said to the upgraded half-man, half-machine. She's our friend. We owe it to each other to help ourselves out. Cyborg was silent for a moment before he crossed his hands over his chest and huffed. Fine. He muttered. But how are we going to get those two together? Beast Boy thought out loud. With the way things are, it'd be nearly impossible. Robin was pondering for a moment before Cyborg smirked. Leave that to me, he stated, before stopping short as the voice of Starfire had popped up from above them at that particular moment. Friends, how wonderful it is to see all of you together in this gathering. She had said enthusiastically. I must apologize for being so late. It's okay, Star. We all just got here a few minutes ago. Cyborg said, before looking around and asking, but where's Arsenal? Right here. Arsenal had approached the group roughly the same time Starfire had. The roar of his thrusters alerted all to which direction he had arrived from. Before he had landed on the roof, they all stood garbed in his Mark 7 armor, official name for the black and gold absorbing armor. Sorry I'm late. I can assure you, there's a really good reason for that. He had said, before his faceplate retracted, revealing his blue eyes and whiskered face, which had of course worn a sheepish look. Dude, forget about it. Beast Boy groaned in pain, holding his stomach as his stomach grumbled. Just get on to why you asked us all to be here. Naruto pulled out something from his armor and once revealed to the group of 5, and as they all saw what he held on his hand, it turned out to be 6 ID cards, which held each of their pictures, at least that's what it looked like. Dude, you interrupted my pizza time for some ID cards. Beast Boy asked. Naruto smirked, a smug look accompanied that expression on his face. Oh, but they're not just any ordinary ID cards, BB, that's what they're made to look like. He stated. Robin eyed the ID card in his hand, observing it with a curious look on his face. I don't know, they look just like ordinary ID cards with me. He said, while inwardly admiring the design of the cards, as they sort of looked cool. Think Avengers ID card except with the words Titans instead of Avengers, but he did notice something a few moments later. Hey, what the D did my picture just move? Oh, that's because it's not just any ordinary picture. Naruto had told Robin, holding out his ID card to the team. Think of it as a video communicator. The pictures are just there to show the default owner of the communicator in question. If I do this, his hand hovered over the picture before his finger swiped it to the left. I can freely switch the image on display to the image of anyone I want, as long as they're within our Titans database. He explained, as the images of one of the Titans fell over the current image after each quick finger swipe. With this function, I can communicate with any Titan I wish. No need to worry about any long-distance charges and roaming fees, I already took care of that. Sweet. Beast Boy cheered, bringing up the card closer to his face with an excited grin, before he frowned and looks at Naruto. But please tell me you didn't tell us to come here all because of that. He added, with some of the Titans agreeing with him. Yeah, I mean we already have a communicator, so what difference does this make? Robin asked, looking up at Naruto expectantly. I mean you've been distracted for so long, this ID card should be able to do more than that. Naruto had a knowing grin on his face, which revealed to the Titans looking at him that there was more to the card than just that. He brought his card towards his face and continued with his explanation. Of course it can, what do you take me for? A lazy, like Beast Boy? Hey, Naruto and the others ignored the indignant yell knowing that that part was true. Just do what I do. He brought the ID card up to his face and spoke to it. Titan's Tower, he said, and a few moments after he did, he was shot by a laser, startling the group a bit, before he suddenly started to disappear from the ground up. This brought a round of panic to the group, but Naruto, before he was completely gone, had explained them that he was alright and they didn't need to worry, that he was being teleported to their new home base, the Titan's Tower, so they should all do what he did and meet him there. Shortly after contemplating, they did just that, with Starfire being the first to experience the teleportation, and when they had all arrived their new home based via teleportation, they were greeted by a smirking Naruto. Welcome to the Titan's Tower. To say they all were completely stumped with awe and amazement would be nothing short of an understatement. The tower was equipped with everything imaginable. It was a geek's paradise with the latest tech available, designed and made by the blonde superhero. Everything was automated and run by one of Naruto's AIs, starting with the living room. It had a large leather couch, and in front of it was a large circular platform. It had a map of Jump City which would then blink red whenever a crime was in progress, which also worked as a holographic screen to either chill and play video games, call someone, or act as what it was, a supercomputer, that was just the living room. There was the kitchen with a marble counter, and a futuristic-looking refrigerator that would tell you its content and what you could make with them. The whole kitchen was stocked with enough food to feed a small village, and the kitchen had a pair of arms that would come out of its side to make the food, and the Titans were too lazy to do it themselves. The tower also had a training simulation room that could turn into any location they wished it to be. It also had special impact life model decoys (LMD), which could transform into anyone they wanted it to transform it to. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash. Surprisingly, it could retain the abilities of anyone they picked. Literally, it was the perfect training room that could recreate whichever dangerous situation they wished without the real danger. If desired, they could literally recreate the same alien invasion that occurred months ago. The LMDs acted as the enemy would, and adapt to whatever they did, making their training sessions harder. Then there was also the teleportation room, which was a room on its own. It was a big hole on the side of a wall that would break down the person it was teleporting and reassembled them back in the tower. The room was under the tower and was heavily protected. Their quarters were as magnificent as the other rooms. Of course, they were pretty basic with a bed and some drawers, but they could literally decorate and make it their own. Naruto had designed a machine that could make anything that wasn't too complex, like furnitures, fabric, and so on. They could create their own paradise within their rooms. Lastly, it was the tower itself, which was located in the outskirts of the city with a high vantage point, and was completely invisible. The whole tower was hidden from everyone, and it could only be accessed through the teleportation platform, which the ID cards were needed for. Being stumped with awe and amazement at just seeing the meeting room was nothing compared to how the remaining 5 Titans had felt once they all had a complete tour of the Titan's Tower. Even Starfire and Cyborg, the two who were supposed to have known more about this due to their proximity with Naruto, were both filled to the brim with awe, wonder, and excitement as they experienced the tour, which had showed them places that they weren't even aware of. They had no idea that Naruto had been holding this much info out of them. It had everything they could ever want in a base. A meeting room, a dining area equipped with a kitchen, which included a wood-burning oven, an entertainment room, a highly advanced training and simulation room, complete with special LMDs, a monitor room, a teleportation room, teleports them to any mission vantage point if needed, and finally, their sleeping areas. The best part about everything was the fact that they had their own personal AI who performed most of the work for them if they hadn't any idea how 1 or 2 devices worked. This place is awesome. It has everything. Beast Boy cheered in excitement. Robin agreed with Beast Boy's comment. And best part of this base is that we're hiding in plain sight. No villains would be able to track us back here since the entire base is under a cloaking field, along with the island. He said, looking out to Jump City from their reflective 2-way mirror-like wall. Just how did you manage this on your own? Where on earth did you get the money to pay for all of this? His question was directed at Naruto as he and the rest of the team stood in the kitchen. The first place they had arrived to see, which was a room similar to the living room, was the command center. The supercomputer in the living room could be called a baby when compared to the amazing computer that was in the meeting room. It had the same circular platform, only much more bigger. It had the same holographic screen. It could be used to hack anything on the planet, including a certain station that orbited the Earth. His tower was the much better and cooler than theirs. The blonde was not about to settle for second place. The room also had a set of comfortable chairs which basically adjusted to the sitter preference. Of course, that was just in the center of the room. There were several other screens on the wall that tracked everything around the world. Natural disasters, kidnappings, and villains about to commit atrocious crimes. Naruto knew that the League wouldn't be able to handle everything that happens around the world, so why not broaden their horizon to other places? I told you, I'm rich, this kind of thing really isn't a problem for me. Naruto said, shrugging carelessly as he walked over to the kitchen and flipped a switch on the wall, which then opened up into a bar with a large assortment of drinks. Naruto walked behind the counter to pour himself a drink he picked up. Besides, I have the right powers that allow me to do this sort of thing easily. He added, sipping a drink via wine glass. I got a question. What's up with the bar? Didn't see that in the schematics. Cyborg pointed out, remembering the blueprints he was given. He certainly did not see any label which had matched bar when he had examined it firsthand, and he sure as hell did not recall helping Naruto build one. Oh, well, I added it in at the last minute. Naruto casually answered. Thought it could be fun to have this added in, you know, to make the place have a little more class. He added while looking at Cyborg with a smirk as he took a sip of wine from his glass. Bro, I'm sure you're underage, in fact, all of us are underage. Cyborg said. Correction, you and the others are underage, I however am not. Naruto said. And besides Cyborg, don't worry too much, these drinks are mostly non-alcoholic, I pretty much have the alcoholic ones just for show but I never partake. He paused to take another sip of his drink from his glass before he continued, and there is no way in hell I'm letting that stuff kill off my brain cells, so since this is already opened, what would you guys like to have? Beast Boy walked on up and saw there was a touch screen to help select his options. He soon spotted a category for vegan drinks, and since he was a vegetarian he considered that option. After looking through for a bit he found something that seemed interesting, which was a vegan Caesar, a mixture of a Caesar and a Bloody Mary without the alcohol, and after he selected his desired drink, he soon heard some noise coming from the bar counter which lasted for a few more seconds, before a panel opened up in front of him with his drink. Hesitantly, he took it off its holder and he was contemplating trying it out or not, but after a few moments, he had taken a bit of a gulp in his mouth and swished it around before swallowing it. Huh, not that bad, he commented, before he pulled out the celery and munched on it before drinking more of the non-alcoholic, vegan drink. This got some of the others to come on up and do their own selections. Starfire decided to have a forest fruit and banana smoothie, Cyborg decided to have some soda, while Robin just had homemade since both weren't really in the mood for odd, exotic drinks for the time being. Raven was about to reach out for her selected drink, however an arm had stopped her, while it had grabbed onto his shoulder. She knew it was Naruto's instantly. Hey, Raven, can I talk to you? She heard him hesitantly ask. Why? She answered, turning back to look at the blonde with a frown on her face. I've been trying to do that with you for months, but you turn me down at each attempt. Are you busy with either Starfire or Cyborg? So tell me, why should I just let you talk to me now after all that? Her outburst caught the attention of her teammates, and Naruto winced as he'd heard all of what she'd said. He sighed. Look, Raven, I know I've been a jackass to you lately and I have no reason for that, but if I'm going to tell you anything, then it's going to have to be done, you know, privately. He whispered the last part while his head discreetly tilted to the others behind her. Raven glanced at those behind her and understood what he meant. Fine, let's talk, but not here, she said, pulling up her hood, and then grabbing Naruto's hand, while ignoring as the others watched as she and Naruto had left their room via shadow teleportation. Cyborg had shrugged as the two had disappeared. Looks like we don't have to go with my idea after all, he said. Robin looked at Cyborg. How did you plan on getting them alone? He asked. Cyborg smirked. He didn't answer the boy wonder. Instead he just took a slurp of his drink while walking away with a hum in his tone. He ignored the look sent at his retreating back. Justice League Watchtower. In the familiar environment of the Watchtower, the Martian Manhunter calmly stood behind the tower's control panel, while he had quickly observed the events on the screen before him, and to say he was worried would be the best way to describe how he felt right now. He looked to his left and hand flipped one of the many switches. Calling all available members of the Justice League, this is John Jones. He had said, I've spotted something that requires all of our attention, I will be waiting in the main lobby till you all arrive. He ended the transmission shortly after that while his eyes were still viewing what was on the screen, until he suddenly heard a whooshing noise. He knew who had arrived. Hello Barry, as usual, I can see you're the first to arrive. Of course I am Jean, I'm the fastest man alive. Barry Allen, aka the Flash, had said, with his trademark grin. Besides, I never really left, I've been here since we all arrived from our last time travel adventure. He added, zipping all the way to his sit. Both Bats and Soups left to Gotham and Metropolis. Of course you know how Bats is about Gotham, and I think John went back to Ooa. Quote. Which leaves Diana, Hawk Woman, and the two of us then. Jean said, as he had hummed in conclusion. Pretty much, yeah. Barry shrugged, before blitzing over to Jean and looking at the monitor said Martian was looking at. So what did you want to tell us? I believe it would be best for me to reveal the information when all of us are available, Barry, that way I won't have to repeat myself. Martian Manhunter had said, while switching off the monitor before he hovered over to his respective position behind the round table. So remaining patient will be the best course of action. Quote. Yeah, me and patience don't really go hand in hand. You remember the last time I tried doing that, don't you? I do. It ended up with me putting a large dent in the floor with how fast and hard I was tapping my foot, and don't forget about the hole I put into the table thanks to me drumming my fingers too quickly. Flash said, as he clearly had remembered all those situations perfectly. He also remembered his issue with super speed pacing. Yeah, he and patience didn't go hand in hand. You're indeed correct, Barry, but like I said, I will not repeat myself if you happen to miss out on what I have to say to the rest of the team. Jean said, but you are free to do whatever it is you want to do, however, in order to keep yourself preoccupied. He finished, before he'd watched as the Flash didn't waste a moment and ran off to who knows where. Wonder Woman and Hawk Woman soon showed off just after Barry had left. Well, Barry seems to be in a hurry today, Shara commented, walking to her sit by her position on the round table with Diana beside her. Hello Jean, we got your message and got here as quick as we could. What seems to be the problem? Diana had asked, as she took her seat beside Shara. I could hear the worry in your tone. Indeed, what I have is concerning, however I need at least Superman or Batman to be here before I can relate what I have. Jean told Diana, and I believe either one of them should be arriving any moment now. He was right, as a few moments later, via teleporter, one of the two heroes had arrived, and it was Superman. The expression on his face looked to be one of concern. Guys, I think we have a problem, Superman said, quickly walking down from the teleporter platform and onto the round table. Jean looked at Superman with knowing expression clearly formed on his face. I believe I know just what you're about to say, Superman, but Flash needs to be here first before we discuss anything. He said, and not soon after he did, the Flash had zipped into the room via super speed. So, it looks like Bats and GL aren't showing up, Flash said, zipping to his seat. We can start without them, Superman had said. Batman probably already knows the problem and will inform Zatanna about it since they're both in Gotham, and I think the Guardians of the Green Lantern Corps would speak with John on a similar issue. Understood, Martian Manhunter stated. Then I believe it is time we discuss the main point of our meeting. Which is? Hawk Woman asked. Time. Naruto and Raven. The two had appeared in one of the empty bedrooms of the tower, via shadow travel, and after they did, Raven immediately had erupted a spell which cancelled out all sound to any third-party listener who'd decide to listen in onto their private conversation. The blonde had also taken some measures to ensure their privacy by activating one of the many features the tower possessed. Taking his armor off was not as hard as it looked. Each piece could actually place itself in their respective places through small thrusters embedded into them. It made it much easier to summon his armor whenever danger struck. It would have been pretty stupid to have the armor and not have it handy at all times. After putting away, he turned back to see Raven sitting stiffly on his bed, her hood casting a shadow over the top part of her face. He could see how nervous she was. Her hands were balled into fists and were shaking ever so slightly. She was biting her quivering lip, and she seemed to be taking long and deep breaths, those associated with meditation. It was a testament of how this meant to her, and how much she feared what was about to happen. Of course, Raven wasn't the only one that feared this moment. Naruto knew he might have seemed calm on the outside, but in reality, he was just as nervous as Raven was as he looked at her, realizing that his was the first girl he had trusted with his secret outside his family. There were few who knew about his Kryptonian bloodline, now including the Titans, but she had been the very first he had trusted with that secret. And when she left him without so much as a goodbye, it had hurt him deeply, even more so after he was bold enough to confess how he felt about her. He could still remember the rage, the betrayal, the hatred, and how upset he felt at her at that time, and he could still remember the disappointment he felt with himself not shortly after. He was glad that he had his Oba-chan to help him get through that, because after Raven had left, he had become quite resentful to those that wronged him in the slightest. To his memory, he had fired at least 40 of his company employees for no reason despite not being able to technically do that. He had been very spiteful at that time. Luckily Tsunade had knocked some sense into him, quite literally, and had taught him to let his rage and hatred go. He had taken that lesson to heart. If he hadn't, he would have destroyed half the city he lived on after what she had done to him with him. He swallowed the lump he had no idea he held in his throat as he walked towards her. He was only 5 steps away from her, but it felt like he was walking a mile just to reach her. He feared that his shaky knees would give out before he made it towards her. This might have been the first time he had actually confronted someone who he felt had wronged him. He usually just fired them, or run away from them like he had done with his ex. He knew it was cowardly, but it wasn't something he could help. Raven meanwhile wasn't faring too well. She had almost let out an involuntary squeak the 1 second he sat next to her, and it had taken all of her control to not teleport out. All the courage she had showed previously when she had torn him a new one seemed suddenly to have left her. She remained silent as he did. The atmosphere around them was one of silence, until Naruto had decided to be the one to speak up first, breaking up said silence. So, the tension in the room could be cut with a knife. They had so much to talk about, yet both of them couldn't summon up the courage needed to say something, anything. It was like they were playing a game of chicken, and neither out of the two wanted to chicken out. Why did you leave? Naruto had asked that question, looking at her through the corner of his eye. He decided that all the stalling was enough, and as he spoke, there was no accusation in his voice, only curiosity. As to him, there was no reason to be angry anymore since more than a month had passed since the invasion. He had learned to let his anger go before it consumed him, something he did long ago seeing her during the invasion, and at such a bad time, all that forgotten anger just bubbled back up. Now he was back to his old self. It was not my intention to leave. I never wanted to leave you, but I had to. Naruto stayed quiet for a moment, taking it in. He didn't know how to feel about that. He had always thought it was her that decided to leave, but finding out she might not have had a choice made him feel slightly better. Then what was the reason? Raven flinched. It was something she didn't want to divulge yet. In the days following her mistake of telling the monks of Azarath her budding feelings for the blonde beside her, she had pondered for days whether to tell him her secret or not after he had told her his. At that time, she had faced so much ostracism over being half demon. Back then, she was still a naive little girl, but that girl grew up. Even within the monks there were plenty who treated her like the daughter of a whore who had slept with a demon. They weren't kind to either her or her mother, and her mother had protected her all throughout it, telling her it was not her fault and she was perfect the way she was. However, even a girl like her wasn't immune to the emotional scars left by her childhood. Raven sighed. She glanced at Naruto through the corner of her eyes. Are you sure you want to know? She softly asked. Because if I tell you, you might look at me differently for the rest of your life. You might even hate me more than you already do. She hadn't told Naruto her secret despite him doing so to her on his part. She felt if she did, then he would reject her like everyone else and retract his love for her. Raven tried her best to keep her emotions in check. She knew that was only one theory based on her fears. Rationally, she knew that Naruto might be the only one to accept her for what she was, but there was still a lingering fear for being rejected. She still remembered how even the Justice League had turned their back on her once that witch, Zatanna, had revealed her bloodline. Even till now, she was still reeling in shock at that. She had heard so much about the team, but to have been discriminated based on who she was related to from those that claimed to be heroes. Let me be the judge of that. She heard Naruto's firm reply while she'd felt her hand slip into his like he had done when they were children. She smiled softly, realizing that she was with Naruto. She had no reason to be worried. She shouldn't have thought about him like that. Unlike most others, he was one she could unconditionally trust. She took a deep breath and began her tale. I am part demon. My mother was human, And my father, she spat out that last word with venom, is a demon named Trigon. My mother was tricked through a series of events that led her into taking part of a cult meeting, and she was. Naruto squeezed her hand. It's okay, you don't have to say it. I already have a basic idea of what you are trying to say. He said softly. Raven nodded and smiled a bit despite on bringing up a very dark subject. She continued with her story. Several monks from Azarath had come to Earth and found my mother as she attempted suicide while she was pregnant with me. She had told him. They managed to convince her against that motion, and after that incident, then they took her to Azarath for a new life. As I was growing up under them, I learnt that their main belief is to leave all forms of attachment behind to find true strength. When their leader died, I was handed to my mother who raised me and brought me to Earth for a time. Shortly after that, I met you. She smiled at this, with Naruto smiling softly at her side. She remembered those joyful times ever since meeting Naruto at the park, and the two of them played on hours on end. She never had the chance on playing with children her own age due to being ostracized and ignored, but with Naruto it was euphoric. Before meeting you, I was never allowed to experience any type of emotion, and I was always forced to bottle it all up. The monks left a warning that my father could find me when I showed any type of emotion, but I didn't care at all when I'd realize I was forming an attachment since I didn't want to lose you at all. Her mood started turning sour at this point. Through one action I truly regret to this day, the reason as to why I had to leave you without a proper goodbye was that I had accidentally slipped of how I was reacting with me being around you. All monks had seen this and immediately they forced me to sever my ties with you, or else Trigon would literally be at our doorsteps and the end would come quicker. I see. Naruto had replied with gears turning in his head on who to kill first. It was a tie with the monks who separated them, and of course Trigon, who indirectly or directly kept her from living her life as she saw fit. You have to believe me, Naruto. I never wanted to leave you at all. I wanted to keep spending time with you. You're the main reason I could feel like a normal girl and truly be happy. Raven quietly said. Back then, you were my best friend, my only friend. I never wanted to give you up at all. The monks forced me into doing it and had roped my mother into agreeing with them despite her knowing how much I felt about you. Raven felt tears well up in her eyes and tried wiping them away, but they were no use as they kept on coming through. As this was going on, some of her magic was slipping away from her control as some objects in the room were broken and moved around suddenly. Naruto noted this, and using his energy sensing, a technique he'd picked up from Raven when she taught him a few magic tricks when they were children, even his telekinesis was based on magic. He realized this was all linked to Raven, as he was able to pick up traces of her familiar energy wildly leaking everywhere due to her current state of distress. Hey, looks like I'm going to have to invest into some way to protect my precious babies from your magic. He joked, but in truth he knew that at this moment, it wasn't possible as most of the current metal in this house was of vibranium origin, meaning rather than nullifying magic, amplify the energy in which magic is derived from. Raven smiled and let out a small giggle. He was able to brighten her up with that sentence, even though she had known the impossibility of the implied goal, at least at the moment. I guess you do. Her mood dulled as she grabbed the edge of her caped cloak. Do you forgive me? She had meekly asked. Only if you forgive me for being a hard-headed idiot. He had replied, bringing her in for a tight embrace. Always. Raven had replied with a muffled voice, with her face snuggling into his chest. Naruto gave a small smile on his own, while he'd felt the figurative weight, which was once his chest, lifted after so long as he knew now on what happened with Raven. He didn't blame her at all. He did, however, blame the monks and Raven's mother, somewhat, on forcing her to do what she didn't want to in the first place. Sure, it was supposed to be for good reasons, but the road to hell is always paved with good intentions. They had approached all of this in the wrong way and should have thought better on settling things, he had thought, but for now it didn't matter. It was all in the past and they need to focus on the future. A future that was now worth fighting for more than before. He realized, with a look of what one would note to be determination look on his face. Crack. Pop. Smash. Note to self, remember to replace broken items in room. Meanwhile, in a local cafe that seemed to be near devoid of customers, one man, who had most of his face covered while he had been reading newspaper in his hands, sat comfortably, while a typically garbed waiter walked towards him with a tray filled up with a serving of tea. Here is your order, sir. I hope you pleasantly enjoy your meal. Yes, thank you, just leave it on the table, I'll take care of the rest. The waiter had bowed in acceptance before walking away, while the man pulled back his paper to help himself to what was offered. As he did, from his basic appearance, the man looked to be in his late 50s or 60s, as small hints of gray hair were seen amongst his spiky, waist-length, dark locks. He had a pair of dark purple eyes which shone with wisdom and something sinister. On his person, he currently wore a dark blue high-collared long-sleeve mantle which split down at the lower half and a simple, light brown obi with a belt wrapped around his waist along with a pair of dark blue fingerless gloves and toeless sandals. He looked to be a simple man to most people, however the very familiar pair of rings he wore on his index and ring finger on both his left and right hand showed that this man was anything but simple. The invincible arsenal saves day, interesting. He murmured, reading out the headlines on the paper as his eyes roamed over to the picture of said hero easily lifting a school bus filled of nothing but cheering kids and the designated driver. Reading a bit more on the article, he had noted that the bus seemed to have been saved from tipping over a bridge due to an accident which seemed to be caused by terrible driving, and the terrible driver in question was arrested later. It was interesting and yet pointless at the same time. Such potential, to use it for menial tasks, it displeased him to see such an opportunity wasted by the likes of the so-called heroes and villains. He knew exactly how power was meant to be used, and he sure as hell wasn't one to callously waste it. However, he also knew that there were going to be some times when such a waste was needed to make a point and casually get things done should other means fail. He wasn't ignorant enough to dismiss that. He also wasn't one to be ignorant enough to casually dismiss that sometimes, certain power usages usually come at a deadly cost that would eventually endanger his life if nothing was done to work around it. That was his current dilemma. His goal was to find a way around his dilemma, and he knew that in order to do that, he needed to first find someone who held the key to his solution dangling in his face, a person he had managed to track to this very planet. His eyes dangerously flashed orange. What a foolish man you are, Minato. He was as foolish and ignorant as the house that adopted him. He was more foolish to think that he could successfully hide his prized possession. It's a shame you had to die as you did. He was more useful alive than dead. It was all in the past, however, and he had to look forward to the future, a future he'd planned on utilizing to its fullest with the power he had, and nothing would stop his efforts, not even those pesky Green Lantern Corps. He was Madara Uchiha, leader of the Uchiha clan, and soon to be the most powerful man in the universe with none second to him. He just needed to find what he was looking for, and his goal would be realized. Nothing would stand in his way, not the Green Lantern, not those pesky heroes and villains, and definitely not annoyances like the Justice League or these new teenager heroes. He will become a god. He will reign supreme. Waiter, could you please send me the bill? I believe I'm done. The grand tour of the tower was over, and with that said and done, the visiting Titans had all quickly moved to pick a room where they'd spend the night and nights following during their stay in Naruto's tower. Each of them picked a space suitable for their needs while Naruto had watched this from afar, and when asked, Naruto simply replied that before they all had come here based on his request, he had already picked a room for himself, and that on its own was done shortly after the Titan's tower building process had reached its completion. His bedroom's bigger than the others, obviously, and unlike theirs, there laid a hidden platform in his room which he then used to access the room underneath his bedroom. This room was bigger in space 3 times even more so than his own room. It was a room he would use for personal storage. The room contained different slots where adult human-sized tubes laid. For a better idea of my description, imagine the armory where Tony stores his suits in Iron Man 3. The slots were all empty, save for 6 slots which contained different armors in them. Each label assigned to said suits were plastered on a silver faceplate which laid on the bottom of each pods. Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4, Mark 5, and Mark 6 were the words printed on the faceplates respectively, and as one would go on, they would note the increment on Roman numerals on the plates, implying that there were more suits to come in the future. Compared to the others, his room was more techy and bigger in space. It was just the way he liked it, as it was he who designed it in the first place. His bedroom was already stacked with all the essentials he needed and wanted. Super king-sized bed. Awesome paintings, a personal toilet stacked with its own hot tub. The space of that room in particular was half the size of his bedroom space, shower and other things that he wanted. Air conditioners, flat screen TV, and more, which included a perfect view of Jump City via two-way reflective wall, which was a two-way uneasily breakable glass wall that provided him with a perfect view of the sunset and sunrise. His room was off limits to anyone that was neither him nor Raven, and if they needed to speak to him, there was a camera just outside the door that would allow them to transmit whatever message they wanted via video view, which he'd later receive on his monitor. Speaking of Raven, the others had noted that she now had a lighter atmosphere around her following whatever it was she did with Naruto as the two had their alone time. Sure, she was still a bit blank. However, compared to before, now, her blankness had taken a sort of lighter turn. Raven especially felt better now than she had in years, yet, she was disappointed with herself for not being able to tell Naruto how she really felt about him, but she knew that doing so now, especially given what happened with her friend back home, Naruto had told her about his years in Japan following her departure. And hearing why he was in Jump City in his first place really made her upset. It was his insistence in her not going to his home country that's what stopped her from marching all the way to Japan to talk to the two perpetrators in question. Would make things a bit weird between her and Naruto, especially since they've only just started the long road to recovery in their relationship. Raven's room, after a few moments of tinkering on her part, had changed into something she'd personally liked. It was dimly lit, unlike the others who had bright light bulbs installed. She had old lamps installed, with candles inside hanging from the ceiling, and of course lining the walls were several bookshelves where she placed books of varying ages, figuratively and literally rare mythical artifacts and sculptures, and dusty old tomes. On the center of her room, her bed, which was a circular queen-sized bed which had purple sheets and a purple duvet, sat near a single window overlooking the city. Finally, a small orange trunk sat just beside her closet door. Opposite her dresser, above which a large pentagonal mirror proudly hung, and like the armor-wearing leader, her room's entrance door had a small camera placed on the see-through hole of the door, which would allow them to transmit whatever message they wanted via video view, which she'd later receive on her flat-screen monitor hanging on the wall opposite the end of her queen-sized bed. Her room was off limits to all that was neither her nor the blonde himself, and speaking of the others, if it wasn't actual bedroom materials from furniture and clothing, then the person would need to acquire the materials on their own, like books, movies, posters or anything else one could imagine. On the bit with the clothing, Naruto had told them that he would be fine on paying for their clothing, but once reaching a certain point, like full closet and drawers worth, they would need to acquire them on their own, to which the others accepted. Beast Boy had gotten himself a decent-sized room with a good window to view the ocean, and it came with a standard set of a twin-sized bed, a desk, a couple of drawers for clothing, and a bookshelf. It was also in plain white color for the walls with carpet for the floor, while for the bedding had a standard blue bed covering from pillows and sheets. As for the closet space, it was a walk-in closet that was pretty big to walk through and picking one's long assorted clothing. Beast Boy figured this was the standard set for all of the bedrooms, and after the current members picked their rooms, the others would be for future guests and members. He soon decided to do a request for his bedroom walls to be painted green and replacing his bed with a bunk bed, and when asked for that he said it was because he was still a kid at heart, but he said that at one point he'll go to a queen-sized bed later on. Robin's room was a standard elongated in style with there being no windows at all. He had requested for the bedroom walls to be painted yellow and to have the bed replaced with red bedsheets instead of the blue. Robin also asked Naruto if it would be fine to convert two other larger bedrooms to become a trophy, evidence room and large work study, crime lab, to which they were acceptable. Naruto figured that Robin ended up gaining more traits from his mentor after so many years living with him. Corey's room has a very wide window that took the majority of one of the walls to give her a very good view of the ocean and most of Jump City. She had requested for the walls and carpet to be painted in a nice violet pink color and to replace the bed with two queen-sized circular beds with pink bed coverings. When asked as to why on the spare and the circular bed, was because it was what she had when she lived on Tamarin and that she tends to move quite a lot in her sleep. And finally, Cyborg already had a room made out just by him because of the technology that he needs to have to keep up with his systems. Sure, it already had the necessities for him, from a metallic bed to hold his weight, a reclining table so that he can operate on himself for repairs, a control system desk to search for whatever he desires, a rack containing various spare parts for him to replace and fix up the old, and a recharge station to help keep his power cells running. But Cyborg felt it wasn't homey enough, so he had put in a request for several other items to be added into his room. When going over clothing with everyone else, since they only had a handful on hand, the others asked Naruto if they could go to the city and go clothes shopping, and he had fully agreed on that. However, before leaving, he gave the members, asides from Robin, holographic disguise, wrist gauntlets, to help hide their appearance to something based on their appearances. He'd confidently explained that should the ID cards ever fail to maintain communication, the gauntlets are the substitute. Not only that, they would also serve as a fully digital navigation unit, a function unavailable in the ID cards at the moment, and when not in direct use, it'll always be under a cloaking measure, to the visible eye. He also explained to them that since they are keeping their location a secret and to not be bugged by the populace, they needed to look as normal as any average civilian. Robin understood that and quickly went to his room and picked up his civilian clothes, a green hoodie, a black jacket and pants, and finally a pair of sunglasses. And when asked why the sunglasses by some of the Titans, Robin had just simply explained that it was for extra insurance. They left it at that. Cyborg ended up taking his old appearance before his accident, and it made him feel uncomfortable at first of seeing an old face after so long. He was still bald, yes, but he saw his other eye look normal with it being black to match his organic eye. Beast Boy ended up looking like a normal teenager, to which he noted of what he could have looked like before he gained his abilities. He had a tan complexion, green eyes, and messy red hair and some freckles on his face. However brief, he felt nostalgia like Cyborg did when he looked at his appearance on a mirror. He clearly missed being a normal human boy. He missed having to walk around without being laughed at or pointed at like some sort of freak, something that happened shortly after his accident, and most of all, he missed his parents who he had lost on that very day, but he chose not to dwell in the past. He had a new friend and people he could call family, that's all that mattered. Starfire's appearance changed her eyes, of taking away the green tint of her sclera to make them human in appearance, while her skin tone went from an orange-tinted color to a normal healthy complexion of a dark Caucasian female. And Raven, well, she had her hair changed to that of raven black with a few purple tints, while her skin tone went into a lighter complexion of a female Caucasian to replace the gray-tinted skin. The clothing they needed was already provided by the holographic image shifter Naruto had provided for them, so they didn't have to wear their hero outfits to go to the mall to get their daily life clothes, and as they all were done with half a day's worth of shopping, the group had decided to get something to eat. Scene change. Present. In the closest pizza shop, and rather than sitting inside the shop, on the first ground floor, the Titans, in casual, sat on a floor above, at a vantage point, waiting area outside the shop but still within the shop's serving perimeter. So guys, decided on what we're having? Naruto finally asked his team, as his eyes scanned the items listed on the shop-provided menu he held in his two hands. He wore his casual orange sweatshirt and black pants, last movie casual outfit. And don't worry about the cost, my budget can handle it, he said before looking up with a thoughtful look on his face and adding as he glanced at Beast Boy. Beast Boy, you can get a separate pizza from the rest of us since you're a vegetarian and all, while the rest of us aren't. Sweet. No fair. Cyborg, now known to the group as Victor Stone, who wore what he had on the night of the Gordanian invasion, had whined with a pout on his face before pointing at Beast Boy. If he's getting his own separate pizza, then I want my own too. Sure. I don't see a problem with that. Naruto shrugged, not really worried with the change. Raven, Naruto, I would not mind sharing my pizza with you both. Starfire, known as Cory in disguise, happily said, before stopping and looking at the out-of-costume Boy Wonder. You two as well, Ro. I mean, I wouldn't mind sharing my meal with you, she added, looking dazzling in her new Earth clothes. She wore a purple and black corp with several orange stars printed on it. The shirt was a snug fit on the girl. It exposed her midriff, showing her flat and smooth stomach to the world, while clinging around her perky C-cup, making it slightly bigger than it already was, and on her bottom, she wore a pair of matching and equally fitting jean trousers, which had some designs sewn onto the thighs that clung to her developing figure, showing her wide hips and small waist. Finally, to complete her outfit set, she had a necklace tucked into the valley of her under her shirt. She was oblivious to the perverted looks she received from men, and surprisingly a few women, as she was happily talking with her friends. Naruto had noted some of these looks, and discreetly used his telekinesis to make one or two things, unfortunately, happen to them each time they looked at Starfire like that, and no one noticed what he was doing. Well, no one save from Raven at least. She was understandably jealous of Starfire due to this fact, but didn't show it, although her tone held a hint of annoyance as she spoke in a small grumble. Can we please just order, or are we going to sit around and do nothing? She rubbed the bridge of her nose in annoyance as she did, while she chose to sit next to Naruto, on his left, with Starfire sitting on his right, Robin sitting on Starfire's right, Beast Boy sitting on Robin's right, and Cyborg sitting on Beast Boy's right. Like her fellow Titans, she was in her chosen pair of casual clothing. Because if we are, then I don't see the point in coming here in the first place. Raven wore a tube top with sleeves that showed the D-cup mountains which her were. She had on a pair of black knee stockings that covered up to her knees and showed her thighs, while she had a small black skirt on that was about 10 inches long, showing plenty of skin. She also had on a pair of black combat boots on that added to her goth look. Finally, wrapped around her neck, was a leather choker hanging off from it. Chill out, Ray. We'll order. We're just deciding on what we're having, that's all. Victor grinned. Garfield nodded in agreement. Yeah, decisions like this takes patience and concentration. You need to know the right mix to make the perfect meal. He added, making Raven's eyebrow twitch in more even annoyance. Naruto reached out and patted her very much exposed left thigh in hopes to calm her nerves. Cheer up, Raven, at least some of us have already decided on what to get. He chirped, while looking at her with a small, cheerful smile on his face. Whatever. Raven answered in a small murmur, as a blush adorned her pair of cheeks, while she avoided looking at Naruto's eyes, missing the glower, however brief it was, Starfire had secretly shot her. Soon after, the waiter had showed up and asked the group what they would like to order, and after he'd taken said order down, he left the group to their devices for about 20 minutes or so before he brought what they'd all asked for. Garfield couldn't keep the drool off his mouth as he saw the food. For their main order, Victor decided to have a meat lover's pizza, which comprised of pepperoni, smoked ham, salami, Italian sausage and ground beef. Garfield got an extreme vegetarian which had fresh spinach, artichoke hearts, Sicilian tomatoes, red onions and vegan cheese. Had a chicken ranch pizza that had a garlic ranch sauce topped with chicken, applewood bacon, tomatoes, onions, and cheddar and mozzarella cheese. Naruto and Raven ended up sharing a stromboli which had pepperoni, onions, green peppers, and Italian sausage. Corey ended up sharing with both Naruto and Raven's. Dig in, everyone. Naruto grinned, reaching to take a slice of his pizza. Boom. He stopped his advance short at the sudden explosion that rocketed a building nearby, and looking up at his teammates, while ignoring the loud chattering and scrambling of bodies, he noted the looks sent his way. He sighed and picked up his bag. Right after we deal with that. Scene change. Jump City local bank. What had started out as a normal day at a local bank had gone to bust a few moments after two weirdly dressed, scrawny, teenage-looking boys casually walked in with grins on each of their faces. Their appearance drew strange looks from the crowd, but the two boys had ignored this and continued on to their business, while heading straight towards the giant vault doors which held all the money in the bank. Seeing they were coming his way, the guard on duty had forcibly blocked their path and politely told them to turn away from here, that there was nothing of interest for the two young boys behind the door he was guarding. However, the response he was expecting wasn't the response he got, as suddenly the guard found himself surrounded with 10 clones of the same one teen, all grinning at him. It was lights out for the guard, and with no one left guarding the vault doors, the now 12 boys proceeded to their destination, ignoring the loud chattering around them, and finally, when both boys had arrived, the other boy, the one who didn't make the clones, twisted a knob on the helmet he wore, and suddenly, boom. It was the scene the Titans had arrived to meet. Technically speaking, the Titans had arrived to meet screaming and cowering citizens, a forcibly wide-open vault filled with money which all looked about to be robbed, and a swarm of red jumpsuit-wearing teenagers all grinning roguishly at them, and an equally white and green jumpsuit-wearing teenager crouching on one of the desks, holding a knob on the side of his green helmet. Well, this is new. Arsenal dryly remarked, while his teammates had quickly ushered the crowd of civilians out of the bank. He was lucky enough to get out of the pizzeria in time following his quick paying of the bill, and he was lucky that no lives neither were hurt nor lost, as per Ultron's report following his arrival at the bank. He did not expect to be confronted by something as bizarre as this. Well, supervillains were bound to pop up sooner or later. He sourly thought. I should have expected this, given the sudden influx of supers in Jump City following that particle accelerator business in Star Labs, he mentally recalled, remembering that particular citywide incident on the night of America's Independence Day. He was just lucky that none of his friends and teammates were too affected by it, like he was. But still, we are outnumbered 5 to 1 by someone who looks like he easily can make clones of himself. If we're not careful, we could be easily overwhelmed. Well, looky here, boys, it seems the Titans have dawned. Goofed, said one of the many red-themed clones. If they's thinkin' dat, they can take on us Billies, then the end for a world. Oh hurtin', right Billies? Right, came the unanimous response. Beast Boy gulped. So, any idea on how we're going to take these numbers out? He nervously asked as the clones started to advance towards him and his teammates. Robin frowned. He noted the advance and he shifted to his fighting stance, getting ready to fight. They have to have a weakness. We find out what that weakness is and use that against them. He stated. Don't forget, there's still the other one we have to fight, if they're not planning on coming quietly. Arsenal warned, getting himself ready as well as the clones approached closer. Ultron will try to find a weakness these clones might share. Cloning, despite what it may appear like in the outside, is never perfect and we'll use that to our advantage. Ultron, did you get any of that? Yes, I did. Ultron's voice replied in confirmation. I have begun scanning the clones for any possible weaknesses you might wish to exploit. Good. Raven, the energy traces of a clone should differ from the original but have at least some similarities. The similarities in a large quantities could be the original. Can you use that to track him down? Raven nodded and flew up to the highest point on center of the room, where she then erected a force field around herself as she sat in a lotus position. Naruto nodded as he saw this, before he turned to the slowly advancing clones surrounding him and his team. The rest of you, buy as much time as you can for Raven, so try and knock out as many clones as you can. I'll deal with the other one as quickly as I can and join you guys later, clear? His response from them was a sharp nod of confirmation, while they settled into their fighting stances. Good, Titans, go. Get 'em Billies. Somewhere nearby. Vantage point. 3 figures spied the battle taking place in the bank, and despite 2 out of the 3 being male and 1 being female, these 3 had distinguishable characteristics which did the job of uniquely separating them from the rest of the normal crowd, and the characteristics had something to do with both their appearance and their individual gifts. These 3 were none other than Gizmo, Jinx and Mammoth. Together along with 2 others, they make up the Hive 5. Their mission: effectively take out the Titans and acquire the arsenal armor from said hero's knocked out body. Whoever's under that armor's really smart, I'll give him that. Gizmo commented. He was very short for his age. In fact, some would mistake him for a midget with the face which belongs on a baby, but don't let all that fool you, along with how he seemed to dress in an outfit that looked too big for him. He was smarter than he looked. In fact, Gizmo, for his age, is currently ranked within the top 15 for highest IQ in the world. But if that guy thinks that's all it takes to take out the Hive, then he's not as smart as I thought he was. Let's just hope Billy actually sticks to the plan, Jinx responded. She was the female of the trio, but let not her gender and stature fool you, because truthfully, she's just as talented as both her male teammates. As a female with a slender hourglass frame, Jinx has light gray skin, sharing this skin color with Raven, with her hair is shaped like a horseshoe, sticking out just a little bit at the tips. Her hair color is light pink with metallic black bands near the top. Her eyes match her hair color, with pupils shaped like a cat's. And she on her each side of her cheek, she has a pair of small, oval-shaped, pink blushes. Her outfit, meanwhile, consists of a black long-sleeved dress, whose bottom is cut like a witch's, and matching her black dress, were a pair violet and black striped leggings which she wore under her dress. Her shoes are black boots with violet soles, and finally, to complete her look, a black collar with a violet charm on it was wrapped around her neck. I'd rather not end up on Slade's bad side, she murmured quietly, shuddering as she thought of her team's employer in question, and remembering the deadly aura he gave just by doing nothing but calmly sitting down on his throne. Yeah, disappointing him was definitely not on her to-do list. Don't worry about it, Jinx. I'll make sure that our plan goes off without a hitch. Mammoth replied as the corners of his lips curved up in a smirk. They may be strong, but I'm sure none of them is as strong as I am. If that guy doesn't willingly give us the armor, I'll just easily pound him until he's barely left breathing and then rip it off his corpse. He was the bigger male among the trio, and being the bigger one, and from his giant stature, Mammoth was obviously a huge muscled male. He has long brown hair, which included brown goatee, and his eyes are white with no pupils. His uniform consists of a sleeveless black unitard with a yellow pattern going across his costume, and the patterns have circles sticking out, and completing said outfits were a pair of wristbands and shoes with the same yellow pattern. Whoa, easy with the pounding there, big guy. Gizmo said with an uncertain look, clearly uncomfortable with Mammoth's response, before shaking his head and smirking. It won't need to come with that. My plan's gonna work without an issue, all right. He was definitely certain of that, because not only was his plan precise, it was simple. Use Seymour's skill to create any sort of situation in a busy location. The Titans would come rushing to save those injured and take out the bad guys. Billy attacks the Titans and wears them out with his seemingly endless supply of clones. That's when he, Mammoth, and Jinx would strike and easily take them out. I'm the one that thought about it, and you guys know that I'm the smartest guy around for miles. Heh, yeah, Mammoth grinned, before he pouted. But sitting around and doing nothing is boring. He grumbled, and beside him, Jinx frowned. Give me that, she said, snatching the pair of binoculars from a protesting Gizmo's hands. Her frown deepened a bit as she picked up Seymour being taken down by whoever's in that arsenal suit. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I hope your plan involves Seymour's getting kicked around. Gizmo growled, and then he angrily snatched his binoculars from Jinx, and ignored the angry glare she shot at him afterwards. Seymour's part of the plan's done. Billy's the one with the more important role, he said as he looked at the entrance of the bank, noticing that the battle had drawn to the streets. As long as he remembers his part and does it, then we have no problem. Mammoth grunted. Well then, he better do his part real quick, he said, pounding his fist on his palm, as the corner of the lips curved upwards, forming a smirk of excitement. I'm eager to kick some Titans. Gizmo smirked. Relax, big guy, you'll get your chance, sooner than you think. The Titans. Smack. Beast Boy was sent flying by a pole to the face, and his body sailed up into the sky before it arced downwards and fell back down to Earth, down towards a very busy cyborg. Look out below. Oof. Beast Boy winced, rubbing his head as his body sat on Cyborg's downed form. Sorry bro. Get off me, Cyborg had said, standing up and forcefully pushing Beast Boy off of his body with a frown. And stop joking around, Beast Boy. As you can see, we're in the middle of a serious situation. He snapped, before his two hands had morphed into cannons, and he aimed and fired off a couple of powerful sonic blasts at the clones that just kept popping out where seemed to look. Beast Boy grumbled a bit before he morphed into a rhino and charged at any clones he spotted. However, each one clone he struck and knocked out, two would take its place. This has been going on for a while now, and it was starting to take a toll on some of the Titans. Geez, is there no end to these guys? Beast Boy panted, morphing back to his human form as he'd just taken out a few more clones. I mean, how do you fight someone that clones himself in an instant? It's like fighting an army. I know, but that doesn't mean we give up. Cyborg's right, Beast Boy, Robin said, landing next to the changeling in question and throwing a couple of birdarangs and some explosives at the clones that kept popping out. Don't let their numbers intimidate you. Remember, we have to stall them long enough for Raven to find the original. And how long is that going to take? Beast Boy asked, groaning, before he morphed into a gorilla and smacked a couple of more clones that were about to strike him. Seriously, I'm starting to get tired over here, he stated, striking more and more clones that kept swarming wave after wave after wave. He was unaware that with this strategy, Billy's current objective was close to completion. In the bank, with Seymour knocked out and out of reach, both Starfire and Arsenal were swamped with a somewhat similar situation as Beast Boy, Cyborg and Robin, except unlike those three, not only did they have to fight off the clones that kept on charging at them, they also had to face the clones that moved to attack Raven, defending her while she did her thing. Come on, pretty mama. Ditch this fool and let Billy show ya good time. One of the Billy clones had said to Starfire with a grin on his face, before another clone blinked into existence, followed by another two. Nah, nah, ditch Billy and let Billy show ya good time. Starfire shuddered, and smiled nervously. I am flattered, really, but unfortunately I am not interested. She said, before she fired energy blasts after energy blasts at the clones that kept popping up and did her best to avoid the strikes sent to her person. If you give yourself up and turn yourself to the police, then I will be most pleased. Arsenal used his forearms to block a couple of hits from a clone attacking him. Doesn't really work that way, Star, he said, while grabbing the hand of the clone that attacked him and firing a repulsor energy beam at said clone, and the ones behind it, vanishing it out of existence. You have to knock some sense into guys like this before they listen to what it is you have to say to them. He added, before his chest plate separated and opened up, revealing a small arc reactor in the center which fired a larger energy beam at some of the clones surrounding him and his two teammates. He canceled the beam before it hit Starfire. Then more clones phased into existence, each with a grin on their faces. Ultron. That weakness, I'm still waiting. I'm already done. I've analyzed the molecular structures of the clones I could gather, and I noticed that some clones are generally weaker than most. Weaker? Weaker how? Arsenal questioned, ducking under a strike from a clone and weaving through a couple of punches and kicks from more than one source before sending them back with an energy blast, before he erected the force field around himself and Raven once more. Behind his two lenses, a 2D holographic screen had popped up in front of Naruto's face, showing him just what Ultron meant. It had Billy's image on the left side of the screen and some sort of complicated DNA structure with different labels rotating 360 degrees on the right side of the screen, and as he noted this and observed the readings, his eyes widened in realization before he suddenly smirked. Oh, yeah, weaker like that. Good work, Ultron. He stated. Meanwhile, up above, Raven's eyes, which were glowing an ethereal white, just a few moments before, had seemed to fade back into its normal colored pair, indicating that she was done with what she was doing. I think I've found the original, she had said, levitating down to land behind Arsenal. He's not in this building, he's hiding somewhere close, watching all of this from afar, probably to keep himself safe. Good work, Raven, Arsenal's voice told her. You think you can handle him while we keep these guys occupied? He asked, and Raven replied with a yes. Good, then go on. Starfire and I will handle it from here. Raven had teleported out as soon as he said that, and as he felt Raven's energy leave the building, Arsenal said to the Titan remaining in the building. Starfire, get behind me, I'm going to end this in one shot. Starfire immediately flew to stand behind Arsenal, and when Arsenal noted this, he erected a barely visible force field which was large enough to encase the two of them. Looks like I'm going to have to send a check to the owner of this bank to pay for these damages. Arsenal thought, grimly, before shrugging and snapping his two hands together in a loud clap which echoed throughout the room. In response to this movement, the field surrounding him and Starfire had instantly expanded as it encased the entire room, easily pushing and crushing anything in its way, including the clones, and the furniture within the room. By the time the field had retracted back to where it came from, all the clones had disappeared. Raven had teleported into the room with an unconscious bound and gagged Billy Numerous and noted the damage with a raised eyebrow before turning slightly to look at a widened Arsenal and a surprised Starfire. I'm not even going to ask, Raven said with a blank expression, dropping the body of Billy in front of Arsenal and Starfire just as Robin, Cyborg and Beast Boy walked into the room, also spotting the idea. Beast Boy whistled, eyes wide. Dude, what happened here? It's nothing to worry about, Arsenal said, dismissing Beast Boy's question as he moved to pick up Seymour's body from the vault he'd stored it in. Let's get out of here and get these two to the police, I can deal with all this mess later. He motioned to the mess as he'd said that, before leading his team out of the building. Well, I for one, I'm glad that's over, Beast Boy commented with a sigh of relief, throwing his arms behind his head as he walked out of the bank. I mean, with the way things were going, if it lasted any longer, I don't think I would have had the energy to keep up. Be thankful that at least we managed to stop this before it got any worse, Robin said, responding to Beast Boy's comment. I mean, look around. His hand simply motioned to the partially destroyed street they walked along. If we didn't stop that guy, who knows, this might have been worse. He said, before he and the other Titans stopped as their ears had suddenly picked up a voice from nearby. It's about to get worse, you good for nothing shit for staying. Then there was the explosion. Boom. Followed by the smoke which clouded their vision, which looked like it was being sucked through a small vacuum tube, and when the smoke had cleared, Arsenal was seen standing in front of the Titans, some of which were coughing, with his hands spread in front of him and two bodies behind him. Let me guess, Arsenal dryly stated, looking at the three imposing figures in his sights. You three are here for those two idiots behind us. Please, Jinx said, with an unladylike snort, while her hips to the right. Those two idiots can take care of themselves. We're here for something else. Gizmo smirked, before pulling out a remote from his backpack and pressing a few buttons on said remote controller. In response, 4 mechanical arms had stretched out from his backpack, 4 mechanical spider legs to be exact. Wanna guess what that something is? Yeah, Beast Boy said, clenching his fist. It's to get your asses kicked by us, the Titans. Not even close, elf. Gizmo sneered, before he pointed his finger at the 6 heroes, but more specifically, he was pointing it in Arsenal's general direction. Hive, get rid of the Titans and get that armor. He ordered. Nehahahahahaha. But the sudden maniacal laughter made everyone around suddenly freeze in their tracks. Sorry Brad, but that armor, it doesn't belong to you. As he listened to this, Naruto frowned under his helmet. His frown deepened as he suddenly picked up how foggy his visibility, and the entire street he was standing on, had gotten. Ultron, I need you to, he grunted. Whatever he was about to say was rudely cut as something was surprisingly strong enough to suddenly slam into him. His body was sent sailing across the street. Arsenal. Whoosh. He faintly picked up his code name as body slammed through and destroyed a couple of cars, before his back finally crashed into the wall behind him. Crash. Boom. Naruto closed his eyes and shook his head as the world around him suddenly spun uncontrollably, before his body was then easily picked up from the ground. He was surprised that he was blindsided by someone who managed to hide from his senses. He was surprised that whatever hit him was strong enough to dent his armor, however slightly said dent was. His armor was coated in what was admittedly the toughest material around, unbreakable and unbendable, yet someone or something had done what he thought was almost impossible. He opened his eyes to see his assailant. He found a pair of intelligent yet maniacal-looking black eyes staring at him. It's very nice to meet you, Arsenal, or should I say, Naruto Senju. Naruto's eyes suddenly snapped open in an expression of shock, and his expression mirrored the glint in his eyes. How? His only thought. Heh, looks like I hit the jackpot. Naruto took a deep inhale of oxygen before he breathed it out a long sigh and looked up at the dawning skies. Well now, this is an unfortunate predicament. He dryly stated. His assailant's smirk had looked like it widened before he spoke. I'll say, okay, don't freak out at the slight possibility that somehow my secret ID might have been leaked. Naruto silently thought to himself. Just concentrate on finding out the who and the why, since I already know the what that this man's after. He deduced after a few moments of contemplation. I don't believe we've met before. Naruto had loudly pointed out in a calm tone, as he looked back down to his assailant's bottom half masked face. Hi, I'm Arsenal, and I'm the guy who's gonna to kick your and enjoy it, if you don't calm down and let go of me. I'm impressed, kid, his unnamed assailant commented, with an expression and tone confirming such. Usually by now, people would have passed out from being this close to my presence. Oh, believe me, I'm close to passing out. And for you not to yet shows how much untapped potential you have. If we'd met on more acceptable terms, I'm sure I would have helped you realize it. Yeah, no, Naruto stated, his tone in a deadpan, as he couldn't actually picture something like that ever happening. Even if we had met on other terms, I'm sure I would have still felt like kicking your then. Analysis complete. Ultron's voice said, interrupting whatever it was he was about to add in his sentence. Multiple traces of the same residual dark matter detected, all of which bear the same energy as this man. Mr. Senju, I advise that you proceed with extreme caution. And I'm guessing that you're somehow responsible for all of this fog. Naruto finished, motioning to the fog around him as he did. So what if I am? Well then, looks like I might have my work cut out for me. Naruto joked. Ultron, please show this guy why it's, shockingly, stupid to face the two of us without backup. He said, before he smirked as his assailant gave him a confused look at his statement. Then the insult was registered, and after, his assailant shortly growled, and was about to reach for the hilt of the weapon that was on his back, but it was too late. A violent shock of electricity had jolted out of his arsenal suit and attacked the man in front of him. His assailant screamed, involuntarily letting go of him, his body no doubt feeling the effects of having more than 1,000 volts of electricity coursing through. Naruto had also noted that the fog had lifted as he could now see clearly with no visibility interruption. He looked down at his assailant. Let that be a lesson to you, pal, and maybe next time your body wouldn't have to suffer what it just did. He said with a hint of smugness in his tone, before said tone changed to one of seriousness with an air of a similar kind as he knelt down and grabbed the shoulder of the kneeling man in front of him. Now, either you're going to tell me what I want to know, starting with who you are and why you're after this armor. Naruto started, pointing a charged-up repulsor right up to the face of his assailant. Or you're going to get a repulsor blast to the face. He finished, giving the down figure an ultimatum of two options. He was not going to openly question how this man knew his civilian identity, that would be a stupid thing to do, as he had no idea whether or not this man's claims were based on a bluff or not, and he wasn't going to confirm it yet. His assailant barked out a short laughter before it died down into small chuckles. Heh, I think I like you, kid, and just for that, I'll tell you my name. He said. Make sure you remember it for as long as you live. He finished, grinning roguishly as he did. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he listened intensely. My name is Titan's Tower. Minutes later. Recognized. Arsenal, 001. It was a soaked Arsenal that walked down the teleportation platform and towards the door leading to the meeting room after he was transported in, and as he did, his armor retracted into its default backpack state, revealing an equally soaked Naruto. As he walked, he noted Raven healing a surprisingly injured Beast Boy. He couldn't help but ask, what happened? We got our kicked. Beast Boy grimly answered, while Raven was mending his wounds. Those Hive guys were tougher than they seemed. He commented, recalling just how badly he and the others had lost to the 3 Hive members moments earlier. Don't forget, they were smarter too. Raven added, her voice was soft and cold. They were able to anticipate and counter most, if not all, our moves. She said as she pulled back as she felt that she was done with Beast Boy's leg. It was humiliating. She murmured. What about the others? Where are they? Well, Cyborg flew off to who knows where, and Starfire went chasing after Cyborg. Beast Boy supplied with a shrug. Don't know where those two headed off to. Naruto frowned in disapproval at Beast Boy's casual dismissal of his teammates before shaking his head. He already had enough on his plate to deal with today, he wasn't going to focus on that issue for now. Instead he continued with his prodding. And Robin, why isn't he here with the two of you? He asked, and Beast Boy and Raven remained silent, both of them avoiding his eyes as he gazed at them. Naruto noted this with an eyebrow raised. He also took note of how the atmosphere in the room had suddenly grown somber. Guys, I think I asked you both a question. He pressed, however he was interrupted by the familiar voice of Ultron. Recognized. Cyborg, 002. Starfire. 004. Phew. Cyborg had exhaled, walking into the meeting room wearing an expression of relief. After what just happened today, I think I deserve a short break. He remarked, recalling how he had to stop himself from blowing up by defusing the bomb that was on that runaway rocket, which was somehow magnetically attached to his back, moments earlier. He shook his head out of those unwanted memories before he turned to look at Beast Boy, Naruto and Raven, while noting the way two seemed to avoid looking at one. So what happened? He asked, before shifting his view to Naruto. And just where the hell were you? We could have used your help out there. He said in an accusing tone. Naruto frowned, upset at the not too vague implication, before he answered Cyborg's question. I was busy, he stated. Someone, who apparently knew my secret identity, had hired a mercenary and sent him after me to take me out and steal my armor. He clenched the hand holding his backpack on his shoulder, remembering the fight he had with the merc in question, while also remembering how badly he was outclassed and outmatched back then. I lost. Even with all the armor's capabilities, I freaking lost. I was simply too slow. He fumed. Dude, chill. Beast Boy said, unamused at Naruto's current state of distress and the reason leading towards it. Don't think you're the only one that lost today. We all have to eventually lose a fight sometime in our fight. He wisely stated, in an uncharacteristic move. I should know. It's not the first time I've lost and I don't dwell on it, bro. Move on. Everyone turned to stare at the changeling. Beast Boy noted this. What? He asked. Naruto shook his head at Beast Boy's question. Nothing. He answered, before turning around and walking away from the group. I'm heading to my room to get some rest, something all of us should do and have much of because tomorrow, we're going to train our asses off. He said, ignoring the whining and moans he heard from behind him. Someone should tell Robin when he gets back. He left the room after that, and missed as Ultron had announced Robin's arrival shortly after he'd left.